of knowledge that they need in order to set the standard of the quality of governance that they want is cheaper than we could ever have imagined. It is now the problem of organizing it properly. And I believe that your platform is the beginning of platforms that can organize knowledge in the simple way that you hand it over to the illiterate citizen and they can usefully apply that knowledge as a basis to set the standard. Next time that somebody constructs a road that leads from the market to their own compound, the citizen would say, well, how much did this road cost? What quality of road did they construct? And when the governor shows up to come and commission the road, they would not be standing with dancers. They would rather be standing to say, the accountability for this road has fallen short because this is how much was budgeted for the road. This is how much was spent for the road. And just look at the poor quality of the road. Are you not looking forward to a Nigeria that will be like that? I'm looking forward to it. I don't want a Nigeria where people are dancing for road. What is it that's distracting you guys? Okay, put away those tweets, Joe. You know, so it's important that we should work on this. Isn't that so? We should work on this. A major knowledge agenda. Now, what's the fourth point I want to leave you with as I wind down my talk? The fourth point is that in the tools of technology has so empowered the citizen through what is known as the power of anonymity. Isn't that so? That's why, for example, the person who, some of you now that are going to say hello to me here today, as soon as you leave, you go and abuse me on Twitter. And I won't know that it was the same person who said hello to me that was just abusing me. The power of anonymity, it has its essential benefits also. Because a key part of democracy is the liberty and the freedom it offers to have a voice. Without voice, citizens don't make effective demand. That voice is now supported by the tools of technology. How do we ensure that the voice is a coherent and massive pressure that activates change in an orderly fashion? How do we ensure that? How do we organize voice? So it's not noise. Because a lot of what one hears today is plenty of noise. What we need is voice. Voice is well organized. Voice is anchored on empiricism. It is not anecdotal. Voice is not anecdotal. Are you following? Voice is not anecdotal. Voice is based on empiricism. There's empirical evidence backing your assertion. Voice nurtures and nourishes healthy debates. Healthy debates are important for innovation and creativity in every society. Through healthy debates, we find new ideas and better ways of doing things that we need done more efficiently. So for me, I think that fourth point of how we would take our citizens, not just merely as possessors of access to social media, but to real, what do they call them? Digital citizens. Digital citizens. We take them, we move them, we grow them, we graduate them to digital citizens that can effectively use voice to shape the public agenda of common good is really an important part of it. Now, all of this suggests that there is the supply side, and that supply side with its concentration of power, the theory or the maxim that absolute power corrupts absolutely, needing to be challenged, and a demand for its accountability made on the one hand. On the other hand, is that citizens are not know-alls. Citizens can sometimes assume that the only stupid person in the room is the person from government. But that's not true. So, how do we ensure that in looking at rights and responsibilities, we're actually creating the ecosystem for collaborative partnership in solving the key problems that we have all agreed are the priority challenges of the society? That's so crucial. But that's not something that we do well. It's not something we do well because we have a poisoned political environment. And so every time that a person utters any word, it is interpreted from the prism of toxic politics. How can we create an antidote to this? The antidote has to be ensuring that we can organize in a more coherent way the current noise into voice. Voice is what we want. Because voice actually gets problems solved. And they get problems solved in a way that government finally is able to perform, that challenges the status quo, where it is perfectly okay for suppliers of governance to simply supply governance. And we then move it to a place where the demand side, the citizens, are laying a standard of the quality of governance that they believe they deserve. I end on this note. It was I think it was in the UN Declaration of Human Rights. The quintessential feature is this, is that in 1948 it states that everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country. I think they forgot her country. Everyone has a right to take part in the government of his or her country, directly or through freely chosen representatives. The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. Do you see that? The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. This will shall be expressed in periodic and genuine elections, which shall be by universal and equal suffrage, and shall be held by secret vote or by equivalent voting procedures. That's the declaration, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, this is what one of the great statesmen, one of the great presidents that the United States ever produced said. Franklin D. Roosevelt said, "Let us never forget that government is ourselves and not an alien power over us. The ultimate rulers of our democracy are not a president and senators and congressmen and government officials, but the voters of this country." That's a given. So what it means is that the importance of what you have come out to do should not be lost on you. One of the greatest presidents of the greatest democracy until Trump has, by this statement, said to us that there is no office greater than the office of the citizen. And in terms of understanding the essentials of the dynamism of growth in societies, we know that all you needed to do in order to create a faster pace of growth in the economic growth theory is actually to improve the performance of human capital. Once you improve the performance of human capital, all the other factors of production accelerate the rate of progress and growth. Now, what does that say to us here? What it says to us here is that as soon as this platform is able to do all the four things that we have said, it would have created a huge population of Nigerian citizens who are human capital that affect the pace of quality of governance at a rate of progression that is higher than what we have ever known. So that the office of the citizen is actually not just a word. It has an economic stability, political institutionalization, content to it. The office of the citizen is so important. But even more important is that Nigeria's office of the citizen is one which, when, as that growth theory shows, is aligned to technology, makes the pace of that growth even faster. Can you imagine how a convergence has happened, finally? A convergence has happened. But people who don't understand will not see the benefit of the convergence that has happened. There's a convergence. That convergence is that there are some of you who already are important and critical human capital for the development of Nigeria. But now you must be the army of people that would unblock all that was barrier to the larger population that were outside of the line that has the office of the citizen, active, engaged, informed, and sustained in demanding a quality of governance that is equal to, or perhaps higher than that of their contemporaries in other constitutional democracies. I thank you very much.
Please, another round of applause for her, and I think we can do much better than that. Now, I have a few things that I took away from what she said. She talked about the Nigerian Constitution and the availability of the Constitution in various languages. Now, the Constitution is available. Many of us use some form of Android or Apple phone. It is available free from the Federal Ministry of Justice in any of the Play stores. There are only 10,000 downloads. We are a country of 100 and something million. 18, 16, we can think, we can write, we can read to a certain majority, and only 10,000 people have downloaded the Nigerian Constitution. So if you take nothing else away, if you don't have it, use this opportunity to use your Android, Apple, iOS phone, download the Constitution and be aware. Let's shrink that knowledge asymmetry that she was talking about. Then the issue of healthy debate. The engagement unusual panel has already been one that's trending because of one of the panelists who's coming. And what many Nigerians tend to do is they like to have conversations with people who believe the same way they believe, who think the same way they think. a country can't grow if everybody is laying down and putting their heads in the same position. We need to be open to hearing divergent views and people who are not like us, as well as opposing views. So let's continue to open ourselves up to engagement with others that are not necessarily like us. And collaborative partnership. For the past 5 or 6 years, I've had an opportunity to work with Enough is Enough Nigeria, as well as Paradigm Initiative Nigeria. This year, started doing some work with budgets. And while it may seem like slow work, the truth is there has been some sort of change. More Nigerians are becoming aware of their rights, their responsibilities as citizens, and are demanding more. It may take us a while, but I truly hope and I do believe that we will get to where we're going as a country. Now, to continue, we're going to have the panel continue the conversation as laid out by Madam Obi, addressing the rights and responsibilities of citizens and government and using new media in a mutually beneficial way. To join that conversation, first coming to the stage is the head of public policy for Africa at Facebook. She leads the country's public policy work for sub-Saharan Africa. And prior to Facebook, she was the global head and senior legal director for the human rights area or department at Yahoo, where she focused on issues related to privacy, free expression, and access. Please welcome to the stage Ebele Okobi. Also joining this conversation is the head of policy and government relations, or rather the lead for sub-Saharan Africa for Google, Titi Akinsami. Joining them will be the executive director of Enough is Enough Nigeria, Yemi Adamalekun. And moderating this session will be the executive director of Paradigm Initiative Nigeria, Gbenga Shasan. Please, again, a round of applause. And don't forget you have an opportunity for questions after this session, so please get them together. We're also using the hotspot of the hotel, if you're looking for it, Ibito Hotspot. Username is S10 and password is S2016. And please continue to tweet about your concerns and the things that are coming from the conference. The hashtag is NMCG2016. Benga.
Thank you, Tolu. Okay, so we're going to have Google and Facebook kick this off. We had told them before now that they will give us some remarks, not because they are sponsors. And I think it's important to say this. Titi and Ebele are two people, daughters of the soil, who have been part of this entire conversation. Yes, they work for global companies, but their feet are rooted in Nigeria. They understand the conversations we're having. And so anytime we have the opportunity of asking both of you to come talk, not just because you're also great enough to attract sponsors, it is a privilege. So let me invite Ebele. Do you want to kick this off? Would like to get some remarks from you. What is Facebook's interest in this whole conversation, and why are you putting your money where your mouth is?
Hello, good morning. Thank you so much for having us here. This is a critically important conversation. I was struck most by the Office of the Citizen, which is a term that you use all of the time. And if you talk about what Facebook's interest in it, if you think about social media, and I'm not just talking about Facebook specifically, just social media in general, what it has done, it has democratized information. It has democratized, and since information is power, it democratizes power. When I think about the possibilities inherent in everyone having access to the same amount of information, if you think about the possibilities that are inherent of people being able to connect directly to government, I think one of the interesting things, if you think about 10 years ago, if a government official they would put out a press statement, they would have a big press conference, there might be reporters who were sympathetic, they would go away and that would be the end. I think one of the beauties, despite the abuse that Madame was talking about on social media networks, I think one of the beauties is that it does facilitate direct engagement between citizens and between the people who govern them. It does prompt for transparency. You can't hide behind a bank of microphones. You can't hide behind a bank of sympathetic journalists. You connect directly to citizens. Citizens can ask you questions directly. So in terms of what Facebook's interest in, Facebook company mission is to make the world more open and connected. So this particular conversation is absolutely aligned with that mission. Connection means creating a community. And when we talk about voice, I was most struck by the importance of having an organized, coherent voice. I think, and again, I'm not just talking about Facebook. One of the things that's important to me when I come here is that I'm not here to sell Facebook in any way. I'm not here to sell a product. I'm more standing for the potential behind technology as a platform to amplify voices. I think one of the amazing things about technology is the fact that it takes away the intermediaries. When we think about the voices that have been powerful for hundreds of years, they're often people who have access to particular levers of power. They own printing presses, or they have enough money to buy elections. I think what's amazing about technology, about social media, is it allows people with access to a phone, one person with access to a phone, to be able to summon support, to be able to shine light, to be able to tell stories that other people would not ordinarily tell. And so my interest personally in this is, as a Nigerian, as a woman, I'm incredibly fascinated and focused on the extent to which the powerless can become powerful through platforms. And as Facebook, I think, given that our mission is absolutely aligned with democracy, absolutely aligned with making big voices that previously had not been amplified, this is what we're interested in. And finally, I think the conversations, policy conversations about what kind of world we want, what kind of government we want, that is absolutely what I want to ensure that Facebook continues to keep supporting. I also think that conversations about internet freedom, internet rights, have often been the loudest voices, and I know this from my work at Yahoo, are often voices in Europe, often voices in the U.S. My dream, my goal, my vision is for the loudest voices to be voices from the continent. We're sitting in Nigeria, 180 million people across the continent, 1.2 billion. It makes no sense that when we go to conferences that are about privacy or about freedom of expression, that our voices are not there. And so this is absolutely my goal, to ensure that this conversation starts to inform the global conversations around digital rights. So I'll stop there because I think there's plenty of time for us to chat.
Absolutely. Thank you, Billy. Yes, it's a good place to clap. So, Titi, over to you. Interesting conversation about Google yesterday. Someone was talking about going to the airport and then getting a message that your flight has been cancelled, and that he never sent a message to Google to say his voice was cancelled. Information organized across the world and things like that, but interesting times that we live in. What is your interest in this, and why is Google supporting this kind of conversation? Thank you.
Thank you. First off, a real pleasure to be sitting here. Benga has known me for close to 25 years now, and I would say that he knows I will not start without identifying the fact that this is one of the best panels I've ever sat on. It's not because of just what anybody has said. Madam has been amazing. Ibeli, you've been great. But by the mere fact that there are 4 great women sitting on this panel and 1 man, that in itself would not have been possible if not for the power of technology. I know it because that's my story. My story is this. Gender equality, yes, but I would speak more about gender parity than equality. My story is this. I do not engage on things except there is a deep, passionate connection to what I believe in, because that is what will sustain myself in that conversation. Why am I personally putting my name, which is a greater brand, on this? It's because I have lived through what the power of technology can do to change your life. I have a set of great remarks here for those who want to hear it, but I will not be reading it, but rather I'll be sharing on a number of bases. When Madam spoke, she took us back to the history of Nigeria, which sometimes, a majority of the people in this room may or may not know. And I want to track back really quickly to the history of the internet when it began in the 50s, late 50s, and then the early 60s. Started by a group of people who were homogeneous, meaning they had more similarities than dissimilarities in their thinking. Largely academic researchers. But what we have today is a platform that has to deal with a range of cultures, belief systems, and that's why you're having conversations around the panel and how can you bring them, and different moral thoughts. This is why I do what I do. The internet gives all of us a level playing ground. The only inequality that remains, and I think we need to address a lot more, is the issue of access. But when you are online, you are anonymous, yes, but increasingly you are not as anonymous as you think you are. So, madam, those who are abusing you and you don't know, we can find them. I'm just saying, that's just an aside.
I don't want to find that.
Exactly.
I don't care.
So, the platform that we are presented with is one that allows you to be the best version of yourself, whether it's positive or negative. That's one. Two is this. It gives everyone a voice. It's given me a voice. For those of you that think that, I probably, I'm the head of public policy and government relations, it sounds great. But I was molded and formed. The first 19 years of my life were spent under military rule. The next 17, yes, you know my age now, which is great. The next 17 were spent recognizing that even though I began in a space of limitation, I could find the freedom that I needed, thanks to the internet. I recall in 1999 setting up my first email, Yahoo, which I still have, and I still use. I use it for my Facebook, which is interesting. I recall setting up that particular email and realizing that all of a sudden, I could find expression globally. And I had opportunity to find that expression positively or negatively. But I come from a long line of teachers, so I toed the line and I went positive really quickly. And it changed my life literally. It moved from being a graduate of English to recognizing that there were gaps within the policy of my country, which I love. Gaps in policy that were not recognizing the opportunities that were ahead of us as a nation with information and communications technologies. So that's one. While on a personal level, I know this is critical. And the second level is this. I work for a great company called Google, which turned technically 18 this past September, which means if it was a human being, in many countries, now it can vote. So Google could potentially vote. But the mission for Google is this, to organize the world's information and make it accessible. Note it says the world's information. It doesn't say the North's information. It doesn't say Western information. It says globally the world's information and make it accessible. This is why this is critical to Google. Yes, we want to organize the world's information, but it's in the information that it's out there that will be organized. If you don't share, we won't know. Second is this. Governance is critical to our ability to be able to operate, to innovate, to grow, to create, and to sustain. If we organize the world's information and make it readily accessible, but then there are citizens, our end users, who are the most critical part of our value chain, are unable to access that information. How many of you know that really Google is just singing up in the skies and the clouds? This is a reason why this matters. I have been heavily involved in the Digital Rights and Freedoms Bill for Nigeria because we recognize that your ability to express yourself is critical to your ability to innovate and to succeed economically. I've been speaking a lot this year around the diversification of our economy, a lot around the economic impact of shutdowns of the internet. But all of that becomes irrelevant if we as citizens, as end users, are unaware of the power that we carry. So, when Madam asked about how many of us have read the Constitution, I had to track back in my mind because I haven't read it recently, which I'm taking away, as a takeaway, that, we read it, let's see where we sit. But that in itself is one of the issues that I certainly know that this Office of the Nigerian Citizen will make a difference on, using the power of technology. Why else does it matter to Google? Google is here to stay in Nigeria. I was so excited, I need to say this publicly, you can quote me or not quote me, to see that when Mark Zuckerberg was going to make his first foray onto the African continent, he came to Nigeria, not once, twice in 1 week. That, you should clap. You don't fully get it. The gentleman who owns one of the most powerful platforms in the world chooses to come to what some people like to call the dark continent. And he chooses what some people like to call the most corrupt nation to make his first foray. That says something, that there is power in this land. And I certainly know that that is something that we need to harness. Thank you.
Thank you, Titi. So, my job is simple. Over the next 30 minutes, I'm supposed to extract as much information as possible from these 4 powerful women. When Titi said that, I think it kind of sank a bit more when people have like all male, at times all white male panels, and then someone tweets, this is a manel, not a panel, all men, you know. So I kind of feel marginalized. Hello, men. I need you to project your energies towards me. Okay, let me come to you, Ma. I'm sure you maybe I saw you checking your phone, so I'm sure you've seen some of the tweets already where you were copied. And I felt very powerful listening to you. I felt very powerful. But there are people who will ask the question that how encouraging is it that many times, even when it's not noise, but it's voice, you do so much, but somehow it's like 2 things happen. One is you're telling government this is wrong, you need to do this, and the feedback you get is either robust silence or you are a troublemaker. And on the other end, some of the people that you're even trying to make noise or even give voice to also look at you and think, is she the only one? Is he the only one? How do you balance this kind of feedback with the necessity of the office of the citizen?
The office of the citizen is an office that you must not retire from. So it's an office, you know, I mean, for me, I exercise my office of the citizen because, look, I've had a good life in terms of my career, in terms of what modest accomplishments I have had. But you know what? What's going to happen to my grandchildren? What's going to happen to the young women that I meet who are in a place in life that I used to be maybe 4 decades ago, and then got the opportunities that I got and became what I've become? What's going to happen to them? That's more important to me than being criticized, being abused by children that I could carry in my womb. You know, I mean, like, let them have a good time. You see, you've got to understand that legacy issues are more important than these, temporary moments of titillation that some young people, do for themselves. And then to understand that that when it comes to getting change, real change to happen, you just have to be persistent. You can't, it's not a touch and go affair. It cannot possibly be. I recall when we came out to advocate for our Chibok girls, and some people just like I did. I thought, we were going to be on this, at the most, a journey of a month, 2 months. Once the government understands that we really wanted them to act in order to get the girls out of the coven of terrorists, they will act, and then we can just go on with our lives. That's what we thought. And, one of the things that we said at that time, based on the fact that that 30th of April, when we did the first march, as many of you would know, the power of technology had already gone ahead of our physical presence at Unity Fountain and other cities in the world. Because it was through the power of technology, on the 15th of April, that was the day after their abduction, I'd actually started the tweeting concerning the need to go find the girls. Before the 23rd of April, when I used the phrase that resulted in bring back our girls, I had actually done another hashtag saying, where are our 85 daughters? To persist in demanding that action needed to be taken. So of course, on that 30th, when we did the march, we were not in any way imagining that this was going to be a journey of 900 and... Who is there that would remember what 900 and... We're on 926 days. Yes? We're on day 926. And it's day 911 of our advocacy since we went to the Unity Fountain. Think of it. Many started that journey with us. At some point, they decided, this is too much. We are not making progress with this. We have to just let it be. But some diehards, based on the commitment that we had made on that 30th. On that 30th, what was the commitment, Gbenga? The commitment was that after we marched to the National Assembly in the rain, it rained cats and dogs that day. After we marched there and we met with the National Assembly leaders that came out to engage with us, we marched back to the Unity Fountain. And as we were going to do a debrief in order to agree what our next steps were, the chairman of the Chibok community in Abuja went straight on the ground and held my hand and said, you people promise. In fact, he was direct. He said, I should promise him that I would not stop demanding until their daughters are brought back. And we made that promise on that day. So nothing was going to persuade us to do differently. We said, so we added a chant. When shall we stop? Not until our girls are back and alive. We defined it as the basis for our advocacy. So for as long as girls were not back and alive, we did not stop. What does that say to you? It says to you that regardless of what barriers, what obstacles, what kind of robust silence that may follow your demand as a citizen, you must stay unretiring. You must stay persistent until the goal that you sought to advance at the very beginning is accomplished. Because the office of the citizen is not an office that you retire from.
Thank you. Yemi, I'll come to you now. So, before 2014, when we had Bring Back Our Girls, and I'll do a bit of hashtag history here. In 2009, I'm sure many people remember, it was Where is Yaradua? 2010, Enough is Enough. 2011, Light Up Nigeria even predated that. 2011, it was Nigeria Decides. 2012, Watershed. Occupy Nigeria. 2013, something interesting happened, and I'm not sure it was planned. It was Save Citizens, save this person, save that person. I don't know if many of us remember. Now, my question to you, Yemi, is this. So it looks like Nigeria generates hashtags and campaigns every year. More than one. In fact, 2015 was an entire issue on its own. I'm sure right now we have so many issues. The question is this. I'm a citizen, right? I have my day job, or I work with an organization that has interest, maybe even I work for EIE or PIN or budget. but how do I identify what issues because one of the things that we've heard from Ms. Ezekwesili is the fact that when you choose one issue you're focusing on, you have to stay committed to it. Apparently, that means you can't do so many. But I know that you're a go-to person with many of the problems. There's a problem, people send, tweets to here and say, when are you going to start the, campaign for this and things like that. How do citizens, in exercising their office, their right, and in fact their responsibility in that office, how do they decide what one thing or more that they can focus on and be effective with it?
Thanks. Just since my first time speaking, a big thank you to Auntie Obi for her keynote address, to Titi and Ebele for being here and for supporting this. Thank you very much. It really means a lot. How do they decide? At the end of the day, really, I think it goes back to what Auntie Obi said. You decide based on what it thinks you can put your time and your energy behind. I think even just looking, as you have said, over hashtag history, the abdication of responsibility comes, Auntie Obi gets it over and over again on Twitter as we do. She gets it as an individual, we get it as an organization. So when are you going to start? Are you not paying attention to this? You are only talking about bring back our girls. There's Soja, there's this, there's that, there's that. So there's a sense that people think there are issues to be dealt with, but they're looking for the person that will be the champion of that. Because, I guess in a way it's a good thing, because it's an affirmation that they think you can do something or that you are doing something in other areas. But at the heart of it really is people just being ready to start on the campaign that they are willing to see to the end. And to your point, the Save This Person campaigns, I think, show a lot of that. So out of all the sort of campaigns that we've seen over the last few years, it's those ones that you tend to have people champion because, as you then see, it's personal. So the people who usually start it is either a family member or someone that knows the person or feels directly linked to someone who needs a kidney, who needs money for medical. So there's a personal connection, and there's an investment in yourself because it's tied to you. So how do we get governance issues in a way that because it can sometimes come across as very big and not really thinking we can make a difference, and which is why sometimes we try to encourage people to work on things that are local to them and that they can work on. And I use this to plug this, and hopefully in the next few months, EIE, Budget, PIN, and CCO will get our acts together and work on this. We're trying to build a portal that actually helps citizens do this. So there are people who are in the same community, in the same area, who have a shared issue that they have a problem with. So you don't want to take it on your own, but you suddenly find out that, okay, there are 5 other people who are concerned about the same issue. How can we then work together, share resources, share ideas, and either campaign from a perspective of a citizen, or if it's, for example, a tracking of a project issue, like Auntie Obi, the example she gave, we can then link up to budget and work with the budget, ensuring that the road in my community is actually delivered. So we're hoping that would help citizens feel less of a burden of being a one-man riot squad, but connect with people in their community. So we're calling it the Office of the Citizen Portal, and that's one of the things we're hoping to do with it. And also, interestingly, we're trying to see, to bring us point again, how many hashtags actually translate into actions at the end of the year. So people start complaining, but how many people are then willing to work to actually solve the problem rather than vent? So what's the slogan again? Don't just vent, act. And that's what we're hoping to do with that. Yeah.
Benga, can I say
Yes.
something on how many hashtags then end up leading to an outcome? I think one of the things we should now know is that just a hashtag is not sufficient. It's a necessary condition for the effectiveness of digital citizenship, but it is not a sufficient condition. It's a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition for the digital citizen to be able to effect change or to make an action happen that produces a good outcome. We know that now. Now, the important thing that we take away from the Bring Back Our Girls movement campaign is that by ensuring that the combination of physical presence and everything that happens on social media continues in earnest, and that no matter how many millions of people walk away, that a crucial, vocal, influential denizen of those citizens must remain to pursue the objective defined toll closure is critical. So if we tried to remind people who just last month said to us we were wasting our time, that, by the way, 21 of those girls are finally back, and we do stand a chance of getting the other 197. That, for me, is an indication of the fact that except you dropped the ball, there would be the necessary action that you demand for as the citizen that is actively engaged in the democratic process.
Thank you. Let me come to you, Ebele. I'm going to ask you and Titi the same question. This is a double-barrel question, by the way. And then I'll come to the... No, this is not militarization. This is because they're capable. Two questions. One is in terms of technology tools. I mean, this is your space. As a citizen, I'm interested in issues, right? And I want to move from just hashtag to action. What tools in your own space do you think, I can take advantage of? And the second thing is, you work in the private sector. And, we've been talking about government, we're talking about civil society, but one other unit in that space is the private sector. And you have experience in working with civil society, both of you. How can you give us some tips in terms of how do we engage? So we've identified issues. We think this and that private sector organizations should also be interested in the issues. How do we approach them? Can we get a cheat sheet on that? So those two questions.
Okay, so in terms of tools, so one, I think that people here know the tools that Facebook provides, and I really don't want to feel as if I'm selling Facebook. I think that anyone who has a basic understanding of of the internet knows tools like SurveyMonkey, tools like Gmail, Search, Facebook. I can say specifically, I think the comment about moving from hashtag activism to actual activism is an important one. I think everyone talks about the extent to which awareness is important. I think beyond awareness, so if we think about it from a political perspective, I think this is where partnerships between organizations like ours and civil society, in terms of teaching civil society to give other people the tools of how to use our tools effectively, is important. So I don't think that Facebook is particularly an expert in mobilization. I think what we do is offer a platform and engage directly with civil society in terms of helping you engage other people. I mean, there's things like groups. So for example, yes, people can do hashtags, but if you actually want to do something, you need to organize. So you can organize in terms of groups. If you want to engage directly with political figures, there's one thing of just throwing your point of view on their page, but how can you use social media to hold them accountable? I thought it was very interesting that now the Senate in Nigeria is now streaming deliberations on Facebook Live. I think that's an incredible first step in terms of transparency, and I think as citizens watching it and reacting to it, and identifying, I think there's the work that Enough is Enough was doing around identifying people's specific representatives. I think this is where citizens have a responsibility to identify what are your levers of action. Is it your representative? Is it your governor? There's an interesting book that talked about the disconnection between the governed and government. So if government is captured by, say, take an odd example, oil, for example. If government is captured there and doesn't feel a direct connection or accountability in terms of citizens, then it doesn't matter. Then they can do whatever they want. But this is where I think tools and platforms can, in terms of transparency and in terms of requiring specific accountability, can create, as Madame was saying, demand. So I think that I would say that's my answer to the first question. And then in terms of how do you engage the private sector, I think that is so individual to the company, right? So I would say specific to Facebook, we don't do philanthropy. So Mark Zuckerberg, he has his own foundation, he does his own philanthropy, but Facebook as a company doesn't do sort of corporate philanthropy. And there are a lot of very, there are reasons people can disagree with that approach, but I'll tell you one of the reasons why. Many times, and this is not all the time, companies are doing philanthropy in order to make up for their core business. So essentially, their core business is a business that in some ways is extractive, and so they're creating this thing on the side in order to sort of balance, offset what they're doing in their core business. Again, this is a blanket statement. This is not true of every company. For Facebook, we don't believe that our core business is a business that is extractive. We believe that in doing our core business, we can actually be a contributor to society. So one of the ways that we engage best is in things like this. So how can we partner in helping people use our platform to support positive initiatives, positive goals? So in terms of approaching Facebook, that's how it has to be. It has to be partnership. It's not going to be, oh, can we give thousands of, or tens of thousands of, or hundreds of thousands of dollars to a particular initiative. It is how can we partner in identifying goals where we are aligned. So our goals are always going to be along transparency, along good governance, women's empowerment, all of these things that are aligned with giving people the power to share and making the world more open and connected. And how can we partner together? So if you're approaching me or Facebook, that's what I'm going to respond to. And those are the things that I'm going to be really excited about. And those are things Facebook is going to be excited about.
All right, thanks. Tizi, same questions.
Okay, I'm going to start off with a couple of, what would you call them? Regular sayings. Knowledge is power. Be the change you want to see. Identify people who think like you, but do not stay in that port for you to be able to grow. There are a lot of collaborative tools that are available. Again, this is not a platform to be speaking to particular products or services that are available. It would not even be my role either to be able to do that. But certainly I think that there is increasingly the ability to be able to find the right information and the knowledge online is critical. One of the few things, Madam referred earlier to the Trumpification of America's democracy. And one of the things that we realized was missing is the ability to be able to check a fact. So we started something called Fact Check It. Now that's something that would be great to be able to localize for Nigeria. You're hearing this gist, this news, this story. You're hearing from someone that this is what is happening, but you want to be able to verify that source of information. I think that's a critical part for you to be able to mobilize behind a hashtag to make it into action. On the second level is this. Like Ebele mentioned, we don't do what you would term corporate social responsibility. I think we do something that is more sustainable, and that is building and investing in an environment even before it becomes profitable for us. A lot of people do not realize that it's going on 7 years that Google has been present in Nigeria as an organization, Google Global Services Nigeria, registered in country, way before it became profitable to do so. And I'm not saying it's profitable as yet. But one of the things that we recognize, I have to be able to qualify that, one of the things we recognize, or one of the things that our founders and the business does, is look at you, look at a country, look at an environment, and see potential, and be willing to invest in that potential for it to be the best version of itself. I think that is also very important to be able to mention. I wanted to speak to a certain extent on being able to sustain hashtags or sustain your role as the office of the citizen. I'm a Nigerian by birth and by inclination. So every single time I see something that is not right, if I feel enabled, and most of the time I feel enabled because this girl knows her voice, I will call you out on it. I will call the situation out. I will call the event out, and I'll fact check it. And yes, there might not be direct, immediate action, but that is something that I have done and I do as an individual. I think increasingly as a collective with this platform or with the local platforms that we have, your ability to be able to call out when you see bad governance, good governance, great governance is critical. And we don't do that enough as a country. In terms of the role of the private sector, there's much to be said in the role that the private sector plays in general around governance. Sometimes the private sector is the enabler of bad governance when you think of corrupt processes. But other times they actually can be the best in ensuring that government is actually done the straight and narrow way. And I think that is the space we need to get to as a country. Not just with the multinational corporations that are sitting here, because I get this, I'm sure Ibeli get this sometimes, is, oh, you're a foreign interest in our country. You might think so. But at the very least, there is development being brought in. The word Ibeli used, non-extractive, but rather one that is more geared towards developing the local environment. And one of my key roles, one of the key priorities that I have, is ensuring that we have the right policies and regulations in place that ensures that we can thrive as a business, which means I will not do business as usual. I will look at what the law says and I will insist on us doing the right thing. I think that's a role that more private companies need to place, whether or not they're in the technology sector, because that's the other thing you get. People say, oh no, we're not in the technology sector, so it doesn't matter. It matters. Whether you're a contractor, if anybody here, how many people here own their own side hustle? I use that word intentionally. How many of you have a side hustle?
PP.
Private business. You are doing a business.
You are working full time.
You are working full time. Permit me, give me two. I'm wondering why Olamide's hand is not up.
Olamide,
they say I
raise your
can't
hand.
see them. Even Boyi. Those are paint staff. Permit me, just 2 more minutes. I'll give you an example for myself. So I sent myself to evening computer school with a side hustle. I made chin-chin. I had already market in my mother's school. So I'll make chin-chin and I'll sell it to them. But I noticed that there will be people who want to get chin-chin first before they will give money. I'm sorry, it will maim my side hustle. So I generally made it a principle that you pay on delivery. That is an example. So what are you doing in your personal capacity, in your private business? Are you paying your taxes? I'll leave it at that.
So I call that paint staff because we have a policy. 9 to 5 is not the end of life. There's 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. It will be sad if 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. is spent waiting for the next 9 a.m. Okay, I'm coming to the experts on the side of the room that has a brown floor, not the white one. Okay, I'm sure some of us have contributions and questions or answers to questions you will ask, because I've seen people like that. You ask the question, you answer it, and you sit down. We love that also. It's welcome. So do we have anyone? Is there a mic? Yes, there is a mic. Good. So now there's a mic. Now we're looking for someone to ask questions. Or make a comment. Oh. Yeah, executive section. All right. Please, let's get the mic. Yes. Okay. Can we bring the second mic this way? Thank you. There's one almost there.
Thank you. Thank you guys very much for this very informative panel. I think my question is around when Auntie Obi started with laying out the history, our timeline as a nation, as a government, as a student of government, it was interesting how informative that was to me in a very sort of simple journey way. And so as I think about our role in the office of the citizen, and this question is for as many panelists out there, could you share times when a citizen-led campaign has brought about government change? I mean, I think in our recent future, we're seeing the change of Bring Back Our Girls, and many of us are studying how that has evolved and the persistence it's taken. But it'll be encouraging to hear how many other times have citizens stood for something without the government's awareness and just pressed until the government did something, and how long did that take? Just again, so we know how long we should put our seatbelt on for.
Throughout the entire flight. All right. Any takers for that? Okay. Let's take some more. All right. We've got a gentleman here. We've got a lady at the back, and then we've got another question here. So what I'll do is I'll take those 4 questions. Okay, and then we'll get feedback if necessary. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, distinguished panelists.
I was very also moved, just like the lady that just spoke now, about our history as Nigeria and the past leadership that we've had so far. And I can still see that it's the same set of leaders that we still have in the country. They are still leading Nigeria as a country. They just keep revolving on and on and on and on. And no opportunities for the youth. Now, going down the line, we know that there are a lot of mass movements for youth to come out and take the center stage of governance. The former president, the former head of state, Gowon, was how many years old when he was the head of state? But in our constitution, you will see that the age limit is from like 30 and above. So there is no really opportunity for the youth stage to really come into place at that young age to take leadership positions. So what do you think can be the solutions, and how do we get around this situation that we find ourselves as Nigerians?
Okay, so we're not too young to run. We've got a question there. Right behind you. Okay, right.
Thank you, everyone. Good morning. I am presenting my question to Dr. Obi Ezekwesili. I am looking at you as someone who has been in government, and now you are on the platform of the citizens. And I look at it as, how do we strike a balance? For instance, if me here finds myself in government, or you goes back to government, how do you strike a balance as a citizen and as a government official? Maybe you're a minister. Don't you think there's going to be a crisis in managing yourself as a citizen? Will you still be able to speak up as a citizen and still be in government? Thank you.
Thank you. And to test the theory of Ruben Abati's theory of demons in the villa. Okay. Okay. We've got a question here, and then I'll come back for a second helping. Okay, you know what? I'll just take this one question, and then we'll wrap it up. My clock tells me I don't have a second chance.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Mine is not a question, it's a comment, so I'll make it brief. It's just about when you talked about a side hustle. For me, I love hustles, and one thing we say is that it's not your employer's duty to make you rich. It's what you do in your spare time, it's what you have. And that's very important when it comes to advocacy and demanding, because we have situations whereby there are a lot of people who want to speak up on issues, but they are not able to because they are beholden either to their employers or to one thing or the other. So it's very important for each and every one of us here to work on our financial independence. Financial independence has nothing to do with how much money you have or what you do. It simply means that you put things together so that you have enough passive income to be able to take care of your needs. When you do that, it frees you. You're empowered to be able to take up issues that you believe in and go after them and ensure that the goals that you set out are met and not be compromised in any way. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And it increases the amount of money that can tempt you to maybe almost nothing. They say everybody has a price. I'm yet to find my price. Help me. Okay. Yes.
Thank you very much. I have a question actually. What I have observed in like Facebook and the social media is most of us here doesn't have the time to be on social media often, but I realize that the youth like from 25 to 16 are the ones mostly that are dominating Facebook now. And you see a lot of issues on governance, but it's in a way that they cannot bring out the issues. They don't know how to give the message, or they don't even have the capacity to say what is in their mind. So do we have any like room or anything that will help them guide themselves into bringing these issues, because nowadays the youths actually are the ones that are dominating this social, where actually most of us are getting older, we don't have that much time.
You don't look like you're getting older, but it's okay. I understand.
Okay.
Digital natives and digital migrants.
Not me, actually everywhere.
Everybody, okay.
Yeah, so the ones that are upcoming, they have more time, and they are the ones that have the power over the social media. So I think if we put that power in use, I think we are going to benefit. So my question is, how are we going to empower them, to give them that capacity to give the message in a way people will understand?
All right. Thank you. Unfortunately, I won't be able to take, except it's a comment, and it's a 10-second comment, and the mic can get to you in 3 seconds. 1, 2.
Good morning, everybody. Mine is just a comment, and I just wanted to point out to the gentleman here who was speaking about getting the opportunity for young men. Young men do not need to look for opportunity from anybody. The opportunity is right with them. I can take away from what I see at the high table. There are young women who have succeeded. I don't think anybody opened the way for them. They did it. I just tweeted to my wife, she's in Ivory Coast now at a meeting, that she will be proud of the high table here. The panelists are all women. So no young man should sit down. Don't be deceived by my looks. I'm 50 by next month. You should not sit and wait for the old people, old generation to give you a chance. You open the door by yourself. That is what it is. Thank you.
No one owes you anything. All right. I have to balance this. So Jen, okay, it's a comment, right?
A question.
Uh-oh.
Quick question.
Trap. Okay, 10-second question.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. The question is to Ebele. Recently, I noticed that Facebook has launched an online course for journalists. So my question is, how does Facebook intend to address issues on hate speech, censorship, ethics of journalism? Because I looked at the course and it talks about how journalists could use Facebook for regular reporting stuff, but it doesn't address issues like hate speech and ethics. And then this is something that are really crucial for online journalism.
Okay, that's the last question and the last comment. Over to you. Do you want us to start from Ebele, then we come to... okay, yes.
So there was a question about when in history did citizens change. There are many, 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 many examples, but one that I use is one of my favorite examples. I don't know how many of you have heard of the Aba Women's Revolt, or the Aba Women's... Have you? So that's something that's very personal to me because my grandmother, Mrs. Cecilia K. Dion, was one of the organizers of it. And this was during the times of British colonialism, and the path was very, very long. I mean, that revolt itself did not immediately result in the British packing up their bags, but it was a key factor. And I just use that as an example because of two things. One, it talks about history it talks about a history, a very valuable history that we have of women's activism here in Nigeria, and it also talks about how sometimes the path can be very long. And so that what was said earlier about perseverance, even if it doesn't happen right away, I think is critically important. But again, I think there are many, many examples of citizens being the change they wish to see. There was the question about how to empower youth on Facebook. I think to the extent to which people are already on Facebook, this is why it's so important for us to work with Enough is Enough, with organizations like this, to give them they need to learn how to use Facebook so that they can reach those people. If people are already there, then give them the information there so that they can then learn from that information on Facebook so that they can then empower other people. And then there's a question about hate speech. We have a whole series on hate speech, which I'm happy to share with you specifically, but it's also on Facebook. So if you go to Facebook or you just do a search for Facebook and hate speech, there's a ton of content specifically on hate speech, but I'm going to be talking about it later today a little bit when I talk about our content policies. And then I'm also happy to engage with you directly because that's also work that we do country to country. So we did a big hate speech event in South Africa, we're doing one in Kenya, and we are planning to do one here as well.
Antiobi.
Okay. The question on I think it was the last question. No, the question by a young woman who wants to pretend that she's older. Her question on the issues, on the fact that the young who have a huge appetite to generate public discourse are not doing it sufficiently or effectively with the right knowledge. She is elaborating on a point that I had made, which is that this platform needs to invest in ways of generating the kind of knowledge that various constituencies that care about certain issues want. I have been looking forward to those who are angered by issues in, say, education, building a vibrant, dynamic, sustained citizens movement that are reformers for education, citizens constituency for education. And they are totally not going to give up until they actually would see a change in the quality of public education in the country. By building that kind of a constituency, you bring together those with the expertise, with the kind of knowledge, because you don't want the conversation, as I said in my opening speech, to be driven by a lot of what I think, what I assume, what I presume. You need everything to be anchored on empirical evidence. You need a lot of research driving the knowledge of what you're suggesting. For example, if such a group gets together, one of the first things that anyone who's been an expert to look at the public education in Nigeria would say to them is that more money for education is not the solution. That's not the single solution to the problem, because the research that we know has said to us that the more funding education got, the lower the performance of the products of education. So that immediately sets them on a course of conversation that would go to the drivers of poor outcomes in education in a different kind of way. So that's issue-driven, that's knowledge-based, and it's important that our conversation as citizens should be designed. Then there was the not too young to run question. When I was a speaker at the event, I think sometime a few months ago, one of the things I said to them is, what's the data saying about the age range of the people who are angered by the constitutional restrictions? What does data show about the age range? Data shows that it's a significant population. It's a population, the youthful population is defined in Nigeria according to the definition by the AU. And I think the AU definition of youth is from the age of 18 to 34. Or is it 34 or 35 now? 35. Now, if you looked at our data in the country, in terms of census, the demographics of our country, it shows that segment of the population is actually the segment that is the largest cluster of a group of people. Now, if that says, if that is so, and you actually have some more, up to 40% of you in that cluster, what are you waiting for? Who are you waiting to unlock your power? Your power is already resident in you. You see, it's part of the problems of what militarization did to our society. People enjoy being announced on radio to be responsible for something before they know that they are responsible for many things. And that's where the office of the citizen has to trigger a sense of ownership of every issue that agitates you in the individual person. So, my young man, all you need to do now is to drive your process. Is to say, what percentage of that group do I have within my own local community? How do I organize around this topic until we can effect the change that is necessary to happen. For example, many of you say that it's the constitutional issue that is the barrier, and that barrier, if it's not removed, it's impossible for the young person to really do much. So I say to you, imagine a situation where that 40% of the population are totally unretiring on this topic. Not that occasionally you come to conference and you talk about it and you're angry, but you talk about it and you talk about it and you talk about it, and then you actually did something about it by making those who must focus on constitutional change to focus on constitutional change for your issue. There's no way you're going to blackmail anybody into changing the Constitution. You're going to have to compel them. You've got to make it such that it is costly for them not to change the Constitution. Then that's when they change it. It's the theory of incentives. So you have to work with that knowledge. And then there was the question as to how do you strike a balance between being an activist and being someone who was in government and who could be anybody that wants to get into government. Hey, that be my guest. When I was in government, why are you laughing, Mega? When I was in government, I was called a saboteur by the government that I was working in. Why was that so? Because as far as the politicians of that government and that era could see, everything that I was doing for the promotion of good governance went contrary to what they would like to. So I did the due process work, and they said it was a work to punish the party that had won the election, because I was working for Nadeku. You're probably hearing that for the first time. The due process was a source of great anger and annoyance and irritation to the political powers of that era. Every reform that we did, whether in the petroleum sector or when I went to education, was couched in the language of outsider in government. Why was that? It was because in government, I carried on my tradition as an informed and active citizen. I wanted to leave whatever responsibility I had in the place where if I left government, I could hold anybody taking responsibility to a certain standard of performance in that same arena. So for me, it's a continuum. You cannot separate your life and say, 1 minute I'm a citizen, the next minute I'm a government official. The public good cannot be subordinated to the circumstances of your status at any given time. I end on the note that to show you how much trouble I was inside of government and outside of it, President Obasanjo would say at cabinet meetings, with you in my government, who needs a Ganifa where you mean? And I thought it was the greatest compliment I could get. Because as far as I was concerned, I was not sitting in government as one disconnected from the reality of society. And so if you don't have that perspective, then you will do your work as a government official differently from the way you would do it when you think, now I am in government, it's supposed to be my season to enjoy. You're not enjoying anything. The public sector, public service, is called public service for a reason. The word is service. But when you talk about those of you in Google and Facebook, you are in private sector. There's a difference between service and sector. Service means that you're there to serve the larger good. Sector means that you're there to pursue the bottom line, which is the profitability of the organization that has shareholders. So if you have that mindset, we will get to the point where we don't have to ask that kind of a question. And my public engagement is equivalent to my private engagement. That's the way it's always been, and that's the way it will always be. We need consciousness of a desire for a good society to be deposited in every one of us. When that is done, it's a lot easier for you to be able to change your roles without changing your values. I said I said recently that one of the teachings of my father is you can negotiate your views, but don't ever negotiate your values. My values are consistent, and I'm not willing to negotiate them, whether in government or outside of government.
Ebele has a very quick addition, but before that, I just wanted to, I don't know if this is right, just retweet it, ma. So the problem is if a goat has yam in its mouth, it can't talk.
If a goat has yam in its mouth,
using the language of yams eating up goats, as corrupt.
Yeah. Yes.
If you are soiling your hand, you definitely can't complain.
The fact of the matter is this. This assumption that going to government immediately criminalizes you, we have to be careful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We really have to be careful. And the assumption that having been in government somehow makes you morally inferior to those who are in civil society. I was in civil society. I think a lot of people always forget that I was co-founder of Transparency International, that I was once the leader of concerned professionals in this country. I think they forget all that part of my history, and they only remember that I was minister. So there is an antecedent of citizenship and that agitation for a good society. And when we think in ways that enable more people to consciously engage, we're the better for it.
Absolutely.
Presuming that everybody who has been in government has become a criminal is your fastest way of ensuring that decent people don't go into government. And you injure society by doing that.
Okay, very quickly, Ebele.
I just wanted to quickly react because I forgot to react to the part about young people. So it's absolutely true that there's a need for a change of the Constitution, but there's a saying at Facebook at the company that it's on the walls everywhere, and that is that nothing at Facebook is somebody else's problem. And by that, and the meaning of that is that, and I think it's very relevant here, you don't need a title in order to solve a problem. And so yes, it's absolutely true that there should be a change so that more people can run for office. But if you look across our country, there are so many problems that can be solved by concerned people of any age, and that you can mobilize and engage and focus on solving the problem as opposed to getting a title, and the title will come. So that's the only thing I wanted to say.
Absolutely. Leaders without titles. Titi.
Sorry. It's not on. Bottom.
You can hear me now. Good. To the first question, an example of a sustained movement, one that is very relevant to this space, the frivolous petitions bill. How many of you remember it?
It's dead.
It's dead in the water. That's a sustained movement, and that's one that happened in these times. Because I know there might be criticism done, in those days, it really did happen in this time. That's a very critical example for Nigeria. So it can be done, and that was done by people who didn't necessarily have titles, but people who recognize, and this speaks to the other question around being able to find opportunities for youth, is be the change you want to see. There are a lot of opportunities. People have spoken about that already. Know your problem. Know your problem. Know it very well. So it's not just bring back our girls. They took so and so number of girls, and that's all you do. Know the problem, understand it, and be able to develop a compelling strategy such that when you have a conversation with someone who can take that strategy and help you implement it, it makes sense. But more often than not, all we know is, there's this problem, and we want to shout on this problem. But we don't fully grasp the problem and the context in which it exists in. There are a lot of opportunities for young people. I'm a firm believer in I'm not waiting for a title. I've never waited for a title in my life. Titles find me after I have solved the problem. I think that's an attitude that we need to have more and encourage when we have our engagements. Recycling leadership. It will continue to happen until we address, to your last point, until we address the fact that we view people who go into government. I get that all the time. They go like, oh, now you work for the private sector. My antecedents, my history is in the public sector and academia. Oh, now you're in private sector, so you're just chopping the money. I'm like, no, why? Did I change? Are you questioning my values? Your ability to be able to recognize that statements like that do not encourage people to go into other sectors to be the change they want to see is significant. I'm in the private sector, having moved from the advocacy and academic sector because I want to be the change I want to see. And I know I can be the change I want to see in the private sector. So there's opportunity. The capability to be able to take it and surround yourself with the right mentors also matters as well. And I've lost my points now. Just give me a second because I want to make sure I speak to all of it. Yes. Dual hats. How do you maintain your voice? You need to know you won't be a popular jingle. How many of us remember that phrase? You won't be a popular jingle. Madam has experienced it. I experienced it. People on this platform probably experience it all the time. Your ability to be able to wear multiple hats is really dependent on your ability to ensure that the core of you, what you believe in, what you know as a value, does not change. And you apply that in different ways. The other part I want to speak to is who has power over you? Is it financial power? Is it someone that you feel like has the ability to be able to restrain what you're capable of? And lastly, is this, that if you feel like you do not have the ability to be able to speak up against a particular thing in the environment you're in, is why we have anonymity. And that's why we're pushing for it in the Digital Rights and Freedoms Bill. And is why platforms like ours actually enable you to be anonymous sometimes. So you know me as Titi Akisomi, who says I'm not somebody else online. So there's a positive and a negative to that. But your ability to be able to harness some of the technology as well to make this happen makes a huge difference. And how do we empower active users of new media? Sincerely, capacity building, capacity building, capacity building. And it doesn't start at too young an age. The dexterity with which my 4-year-old handles my mobile devices is amazing, which tells me that by the time she's 8, she'll probably be able to do a lot of the things I'm able to do at 18. So I better ensure that I'm incorporating in her education at this point in time the ability to make the right decisions and to organize and to be able to speak up when she needs to be able to speak up. Thank you.
Benga, can I ask you a question? Yes. Maybe you and Yemi can answer. In the conversation on digital citizenship, there is almost a large population. If you took the population of the poor, according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, 2011 household survey as your data for this, then you're talking about 61% of the population being poor. Now, that 61%, interestingly, resembles the population of the children from poor families that are left in failing public school systems. Now, if you are looking at digital citizenship as a basis for rapid development of the actively informed and knowledge-driven citizen who can be an important part of our constitutional democracy, then it means there has to be an investment that is instant. Now, for that engagement, for that investment, you require a sound coalition. Is that a coalition that's already in the making? Is that a coalition that you even imagine is feasible? Because, as I said in that opening, if you added technology and the power that it has to governance on the side of the citizens, what it does in improving the quality is so high, and it indirectly affects the economic growth that you can achieve. So how do you address this so that by the third annual event, you actually have something where you are attacking this particular issue?
Ebele, how many people on Facebook, Nigerians in Nigeria? I don't know the numbers. I don't know if Gwenga knows.
15?
10, 15?
No, I think it's like 8 million.
8 million, okay,
Yeah.
good. So to answer Auntie Obi's question, I think as an organization, so the coalition doesn't exist and the conversation to form it hasn't even started. As an organization, one of the things we've always said is that the idea of sort of using technology and this digital citizenship is not necessarily that everybody has to have access. So we teach a principle about the thumb. So we say your thumb is your only finger that can touch your other fingers very easily. If you try it with any of your other fingers, they will struggle, but your thumb is the only one. So if we use Facebook platform as an example, 8 million Nigerians in Nigeria on Facebook, for the sake of argument, let's say we even get 500,000 of those people who are engaged and interested in this conversation. If each of those 500,000 people is a thumb, and they reach 4 people who are offline, and each of those 4 reach another 4 who are offline, the exponential impact of that is huge. So it's not necessarily a direct use of technology by the people they relating to, but it's an indirect impact. Because you started, you got your information through access. And then you've now taken that offline and you're engaging with anywhere from your tailor to your pepper seller. And if people are actively taking information that they have and teaching and engaging people, I mean, one of the things I loved about what you said earlier was audio for the Constitution. Overcomes your barrier for literacy. People can hear it. In the office, we're working on a booklet that basically strips the Constitution to the most essentials. We're calling it Constitution 101. And that would then be translated into like regular English that people can read. So that's the way we have sort of approached it, not due to sort of our focus and strength, just empowering the people who understand the issues, who have access, and letting them see the benefit of taking that offline.
So could the next engagement be one, the year-long engagement, be one that seeks to generate your 500,000 sustained terms?
Exactly.
Because until you have your 500 sustained terms, that are woke. Is that the word you guys
That's
use?
our woke, yes, very woke. Yeah.
You know, so until you have that, it's almost impossible for you to, through them, reach the others. Because for as long as there's constitutional illiteracy, it's going to be difficult for the woman in Tejuosho to know that when an administrator in Tejuosho market violates her constitutional rights, that there are recourses that are available to her. So it's just taking this big problem and getting bites of it, and then having the actions that lead to outcomes.
Outcomes, yes, definitely. Thank you. I just wanted to quickly, to the point of consistent action. I think, to be honest, elections, the 2015 elections, some people would say would be a reflection of citizens sort of pushing until something happened. And then at 2:45, there is a session on case studies, not necessarily government change, but citizens in their communities, a mining community dealing with the Ikeja Disco, now dealing with telecoms and taking them to court, citizens sort of working together to get outcomes.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me put your hands together for this panel of powerful women, PPW. I apologize that, I'm sure you noticed we ran over time. Yemi is moderating the next panel, and we have a panelist who's not around, so we'll make up for time on that. Thank you. Tolu has been looking at me like, get off that stage. Thank you, everyone.
All right, please, again, another round of applause for the panelists. A quick picture before they get off. Another reminder that the bathrooms are to my left, to the back, and if you're also interested in taking your tea or your coffee, you can do that in the course of the conversations that we're having this that we're having today. So just step outside, you'll find the tables set up there. The lounges are available. You see the ladies taking advantage of them. If you're tired of where you're sitting, please make your way to any of the setup lounges, and you can, of course, be part of the conversations from there. We are also live streaming. Seeing a number of tweets using the hashtag NMCG 2016. So please keep the comments and the tweets coming in. This is also access to the Wi-Fi for the event. Live stream is available. You can go to youtube.com/pin Nigeria/live. So anybody who has shown interest in being part of this but is not available, you can also direct them to that website in order for them to watch the live stream. So we'll move straight into the next conversation, which will be on new media and national orientation, the role of media in citizens' education. Now, citizenship education is actually something that a country is teaching. It's been part of the national curriculum in the United Kingdom since 2002. And that's because they made a decision, and all research points to the fact that when you educate your citizenry, you get better results for it. And this education starts at the primary and the secondary levels. Citizenship education is about enabling people to make their own decisions and take responsibility for their own lives and, of course, their communities. Democracies need active, informed, and responsible citizens, those willing and able to take responsibility for themselves and their communities and contribute to the political process. What kind of knowledge, attitudes, and skills are essential for being a citizen in the media age? Where does the media come in on educating the citizens? So first, coming up to be part of this panel, I'd like to introduce to you the first panelist, and he, of course, is, if I could open my page, Garba Abari. Please put your hands together for him. Mr. Garba Abari is the Director General of the National Orientation Agency since May 2016. He's also the Chairman, Independent Poverty Alleviation Initiative, and National Coordinator of the Anti-Debt Fund. He's Executive Director of the Abuja Policy Consulting Limited and Basis Projects Limited. Again, another round of applause for him. Also joining him on the panel is Mr. Musikilu Mojid, who is the Managing Editor of the Abuja-based Premium Times newspaper, which has won local and international acclaim for its investigative journalism tradition. Please, a round of applause for him as well. I'm actually a very big fan of the work that Premium Times is doing. Now to moderate this panel, I'll call Yemi Adamalekun back to the stage, the Executive Director of Enough is Enough Nigeria. Please, a round of applause for all of the panelists as we get this panel started right now. And to join them, we had initially thought he wasn't going to be make it, but he has made himself available. A round of applause for Chidi Odunkalu. He's a Senior Legal Officer for the Africa Program of Open Society, the Justice Initiative, based in the Abuja office. He's also a lawyer and advocate for Nigeria and the former chairman of the National Human Rights Commission. Please, a round of applause for Chidi Odunkalu, please. Let's encourage him as he comes, and we'll get the conversation started.
Okay. All right. He says he'll join us.
All
Thank
right.
you very much, everyone. Yes, as Wenga said, the last session ran a bit over. We're mindful that Ebele and Titia were with us just with us for today. I wanted to get as much sharing as we can from them. So thank you very much. So the objective of this panel is to talk about how new media helps sort of shaping people's understanding of what's happening in Nigeria, how people understand what's happening, how people get information. One of the things I think it was even interesting, Auntie Obi from the previous panel, she's a very big advocate of using social media to educate. So she has an ongoing series that's been ongoing now for maybe 2 years called Public Policy 101. And she uses that to just educate and share information on public policy and the government. So the conversation this afternoon will be about that. This afternoon, I think we got information late. Mr. Garba is not here, but he's been represented by Mr. Aminu Davidson, who is the Director, Documentation and Publication, who's the Director of Documentation and publication. So I guess I'll start with opening remarks from both of you, and then we'll have a conversation with the audience on the issue. Yeah?
Well, thank you so much. Let me stand on the existing protocol to just make a brief remark on behalf of my Director General. He's sending his greetings. He was supposed to be here, but is indisposed. And unfortunately, I was in the hospital when they called me to come to office. I didn't know what it was about. Getting to office, they said I should come straight here. I didn't know what the program is about, but I am here. So I want to thank you all.
Yeah, because sorry, I don't know, is it? Well, you can never go wrong with good day. I don't know whether it's morning or afternoon. Okay, good day anyway. Kind of somewhat gratified to be here and to get the free tutorial from the previous session. I think we're in the subject matter of new media and digital media and civics. Our civics is a germane one. It's unfortunate that we can't get as many of the institutions as we could. And it's also important, it's significant in my view that this is happening on a day when the spokesperson for the president has opted out of coming to this event because, quite honestly, of what I consider bigotry. And on a day in which one of the biggest consulting firms in the country has taken to issuing a statement to say that they object to a human being created by God. And this is a country in which we all claim to be very godly and very faithfully. You know, we all go to our churches, we all go to our mosques, and we all believe that the Almighty creates every human being, but we cannot bear the next human being that is not the model of whom we think a human being should be or could look like. And that's our underlying problem in Nigeria, coexistence. Coexistence with people who are different, who don't speak like us, who don't look like us, don't worship like us, but are nevertheless human beings like us. And so we have all this knowledge, we have all this information about our faith, about our country, information from the digital age, but we lack knowledge in spite of the information, and even worse, we lack belief. And I do think that these are things that new media, digital media can help us bridge, and with public agencies providing content, providing guidance. But how can they do it anyway when the public space itself is undergirded by this soft bigotry that underlies pretty much everything we do in our country? That really is the reason I came here. And I was hoping we were going to have a discussion, but there you go. Government objects to Nigerians sitting down to talk to one another because government chooses to decide which kind of Nigerian should address Nigerians. Welcome.
Okay, so this will get started very early. I mean, it's a conversation, and I'm glad we have Mr. Ezekwesili has sort of tilted it a bit differently than what we had planned. But it's a conversation. I'd be really interested in hearing what people's thoughts. The panel, I mean, just to provide some context, in case you haven't followed it, I mean, you will not be on Twitter if you haven't followed the conversation. We have a panel tomorrow called Engagement Unusual. And the idea for the panel when we conceived the conference was to have a conversation around how people are using new media in interesting ways that don't necessarily get through the general conversations on new media. One of the first things we polled was, for example, Hausa Facebook. How many people know that there's a big community on Hausa Facebook? By show of hands, let me see. How many people know? Exactly, and that's part of the reason. Ebele doesn't really count because it's her job to know. But really that's what we were trying to show, that, and for us, we found out during the 2011 elections that there were so many people talking about elections, especially when the riots broke out in the northern parts of the country. It was already flagged on Hausa Facebook, quote unquote, before the rest of the country found out. So we thought it would be an interesting conversation, since we're talking about citizens' engagement. How are citizens using new media in unusual ways? So we invited the personal assistant to the president, who's in charge of Hausa Facebook, as one of the panelists. And then it was one of the panels, quite honestly, that it took a while to find people to speak on. So it evolved over time. And then later, we also invited a gentleman by the name of Bobrinsky. Who knows Bobrinsky here? I'm sure more show of hands than Hausa Facebook. Until you ask me. No, exactly, which is very interesting. So what has then happened is Bashir made a post on Instagram, either jokingly or not jokingly, saying that he was not going to come to the panel because of Bobrinsky. He has pulled out of participating in the panel tomorrow. And that sort of started a storm of conversations. And that is also followed by the moderator, Shubomi Plumpton, who works for a company called Older Consulting. That's what Mr. Odekalo was referring to. She has also declined participating in the panel. And so it's an interesting conversation around what the focus of the panel was and how the personalities who were being on the other panelist that you might also know is Frank Dunga, the character Frank Dunga. Who knows Frank Dunga here? Okay, a few more hands, exactly. So, I mean, do people see the rationale of the panelist? Do they make sense? Thank you, very good. I'm glad to hear that. So that was really the idea of the people outside of the topic of the panel. So that, I mean, it's an interesting point. How does new media help us in terms of our national orientation? Who are we? Where are we from? Who's a northerner? Who's a southerner? We see it come up from time to time when we have, for example, appointments or when things happen in some parts of the country. Niger Delta Avengers, herdsmen, Fulani herdsmen, and farmers. So these are the kinds of things that it provides an opportunity for us to learn. But sometimes we find that we're so stuck in our sense of what is right and what is wrong, who is Nigerian and what is right, that people are not willing to engage or learn. And that's the conversation I would like us to have this afternoon. So opening it to the floor. Comments, questions? Really? Oh, wow. Oh, wow. No question. Okay, there's someone who has a comment in front. There are two, okay, two hands, actually 3 hands. Okay, good. Where are the mics? Where are my ushers and the mics? Ushers and the mics, ushers and the mics. There are 3 hands in front.
Good morning. My name is Mustafa Mohammed Jami from Coin Communication Consult. I'm really happy, very happy to be part of this session. And so far, what I've gotten, it's been useful, and I've been sharing it also with people that follows me on my social networks as well. This particular session is something that I've been looking forward to, which is all about the orientation, the new media and the orientation. I think it's something very, very important. It's something we need to focus more on. Our people, the way we consume. How do we consume? The consumption, we have the producer, yes, they know what they're supposed to put in, not even all of them. But how do people consume what they got, what they are getting?
Sorry, what do you mean, consume what?
I mean, the content we
right.
are producing, how are people consuming it? It's another thing on its own, that there are supposed to be some certain kind of orientation for people to know how to differentiate between a fact and truth and untruth. And especially when it comes to being objective and analytical in consuming a certain content. I think we'll look forward to this session, and I'm happy to be with you once again.
So your question or a comment?
A comment.
Okay, just how people consume content in a sense. Right, great. The person right next to you had his hand up as well.
My name is Salisim Indawa from Digital Development Hub, Kano. My own is with regards to what we call the new media, and in particular talking about the internet rights. Virtually, internet rights is a bit almost, I can call it in my own terms, a fundamental right for every Nigerian, because we can discover that there are policies, that align to internet rights, in which every Nigerian is expected to, be privileged, or yes, such privilege to be mandated when exercising social media stuff. But to my surprise, always, what is paining me is that in Nigeria, you discover that most of those policies of internet rights are in place, but surprisingly are not all that enforced, so that all the service providers, or I can say ISP, internet service providers, should be compliant to all such kinds of agreement. But at times I got to be skeptical that where does this went wrong? Is it from the side of the policymakers that they are not enforcing?
Can you give an example of what kind of?
Okay, well, so to say, especially talking about like the tariff charges when it comes to using internet on a daily charges. Honestly, Nigerians in Nigeria here, the charges is not just. Honestly, Nigerians are exposed, by the so-called service providers.
So you think we're paying too much for data?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, we are really paying too much.
Okay.
And there exists laws in place in terms of internet rights.
Okay.
And I wish some of those of ISP are here so that we can digress, discuss this more. So what went wrong, and how can we, if at all we are serious about improving, citizens' participation.
So in terms of access, so reducing the cost of internet to increase access.
Yes, it's good access, and that will eventually promote digital inclusion and citizens' participation as well. Thank you.
Great. The next, did you have a comment?
Good day, everyone. My question actually fits into about 4 panels that's going to sit during this conference, starting from this one into those that would happen tomorrow. I'm an internet user. I get a lot of my information from the internet, and based on my observation when it comes to education, the internet has shown clearly that Nigerians on average are below expected level of an education that you would think that would have attained in 2016. I'm concerned that the government is not picking up on this and doing more. There's no focus on orientation of Nigerians in general into a world that they do not know much about, which is the internet. We have taken the internet, and we're using it in anyhow, any way. And the most concerning aspect of the way the internet is being used is the clear division along ethnic lines in everything that is discussed on the internet. And the division that a lot of the bloggers are aiding, I would say, by enabling comments that are derogatory to to our culture, to our ethnic backgrounds. My concern is, my question to this particular panel, I'm going to ask my questions over a couple more panels, like I said. How is the government doing anything in pushing orientation of the use and the consequence of internet usage along the lines that I've mentioned, in division, in ethnic, causing a lot of bringing to light ethnic bigotry and hatred and division.
So not censorship, but how is government helping Nigerians adapt to what is being presented to them? Got it.
Yes.
Okay, so let's do this round, and then we'll do another round of comments and feedback. So I don't know if you want to.
I'm not government.
It's okay. He can speak to government.
I'm not government. So that's a delightful question, and I'd like to hear government respond to it. But I'll give you my own perspective as a citizen who moonlighted in public service. First of all, I think I do recognize some of the problems you've mentioned, not necessarily because the metrics are in the internet, but our educational system is flawed, quite fundamentally. Access, adequacy, affordability are all issues, and curriculum development has lagged behind for youngs. Our national education policy is out of date, and you've got a postcode determinism, what I call postcode determinism to education. If you are born in Lagos, the chances of your going to school are exponentially much higher than if you're born in Maiduguri. And if you're born in Jos, the chances of your going to school are exponentially much higher than if you're born 1 hour away in Bauchi. So, so there is that postcode determinism, but there is also a gender determinism. If you are born in Mutumbi, okay, and you're female, the likelihood of your going to school is less than 50% of the likelihood of somebody born in the same community who is male. And I don't think, to begin with, I think historically, this is not one regime or the other, historically across the board, I don't think our government has done enough to close these gaps of geopolitics and these gaps of status and these gaps of gender in terms of access to education. That's one. There is a skills dimension to it, which is our education system and curriculum, the skills we're teaching them, have not in any way caught up with the needs of the times. On the contrary, we've deepened the problems. And you see it from the universities. People organize on ethnic platforms. These days, the biggest qualification to becoming a vice chancellor is son of the soil or daughter of the soil. If you're not from the locality in which the university is located, you cannot be vice chancellor. If you're not from that locality, you can't head the students' union. If you're not from that locality, you cannot be director of transport in the students' union government. Now, that deepens all of this. I've got to say the body language of the current president and his immediate predecessor have also deepened these divisions. And let's be clear. Now, if you criticize President Buhari on social media, they lynch you. But we've got to be honest with ourselves. His body language has not been particularly conducive to national cohesion, to a country of one people, undivided by anything other than loyalty to green, white, green, irrespective of which part of it you come from. That is my honest view, and I would say it anywhere. Now, if that means SSS come and beat down my house at night, so be it. But we've got to be honest with ourselves in this country. And part of the difficulty we've got is that we mollycoddle things that are simply not acceptable. I think agencies of government in that sense have not helped. Now, there's profound digital illiteracy, and you cannot have profound digital illiteracy in the public space and talk about the kinds of things you're talking about. So if you look at the .gov.ng domain, uptake on net, as at we speak, in public agencies is less than 10%. As at 3 years ago, it was 4%. Now, the same people who object to Freedom of Information Act will do government business on Google, on Gmail. They'll do government business on Hotmail. They'll do government business on Yahoo. Which means basically what? We are exporting our official information to foreign companies, including at agencies like the National Orientation Agency. Officials, low-level officials, middle-level management officials at the National Human Rights Commission, where I was the chair, refused to migrate to our official domain. But they will oppose your doing work with the Freedom of Information Act because they say there is Official Secrets Act. Official secrets that don't appertain to Google or to Yahoo. So basically, Google has better access to our secrets than we do. And that is official stuff. So this degree of digital illiteracy and the profundity of it all just confounds you in the public space. When you then migrate from the platform and attitude and and all of that, to content, you have even worse problems. And you go to a place and the chief executive is from that place, and the language of the office is that. And you actually see people trying to learn that language in order to have access. And what are they trying to have access to? So that they can get ESTA codes, they can be put on a trip on which they can be paid ESTA codes. Now, that is what we've been reduced to. I do not think that we have for a long time had any leader who is prepared to change any of this. This is not about Buhari or Jonathan. This is not about PDP or APC. As far as I'm concerned, all the parties are the same. People migrate. There's mobility of everything across the permeabilities of the parties. I don't see the difference. The reality is that there is an absence of a leadership ethos that speaks to the average Nigerian, irrespective of postcode, irrespective of gender, and that seeks to help us realize we can be one. It may take time, but you know what? We can follow a common path to a shared destiny in which all of us can buy in. So how does that reflect? An absence of national orientation, which is the framework, the framing of this session. And so, and the reason, I went into Rwanda when dead bodies were still being eaten by maggots immediately after the genocide. And people ask me, so what drives you into this, the kind of work you do? And I say, you know what? If you saw Rwanda then, you would not want it to happen to your worst enemies. And the thing that strikes me is Nigeria, quite honestly, I don't want to frighten anybody, but Nigeria is a genocide waiting to happen. You know why? If you give me your name, Chidi, I will tell you where you come from. You give me your name, Bumi, I tell you where you come from. If you give me your name, Ahmad, I'll tell you where you come from, or Ocheiku, okay? And when you can locate people like that, with reference to identities they cannot change, all you need is a minor drop of gasoline, and you spread hate beyond the capabilities of institutions of state or government to contain them. That is why leadership is important. That's why driving content is important. That's why investing in education is important. That's why investing in a curriculum that enables Nigerians to share common values, identities, orientation is important. But above all, that is why you need a president who sees all of the country, not just a little part of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before Mr. Davidson speaks, and Mr. Davidson is from the National Orientation Agency, so looking forward to hearing his remarks. I just wanted to follow up on what Mr. Odekalu said around education. So beyond what you said about language and people trying to learn language, another thing we notice is people changing what they wear. So if it's Niger Delta, everybody's wearing bowler hats and looking that way. Now everybody's in Babariga because that's the order of the day. But going back to your issue about our curriculum and our education system, you're now currently the president of the Alumni Association of Unity Secondary Schools. Who went to a Unity Secondary School here? Okay, so Mr. Odekalu is now the chairman of the Alumni Association. What role is the Alumni Association trying to play or can play in actually reforming this curriculum that we say is quite a problem?
Well, yes, indeed. I left the National Human Rights Commission to take on trying to rebuild, because I do think, I believe with every fiber in me that education is the new frontier. The only frontier that matters, as a matter of fact. And when you look at the education statistics, in this year, from northeast Nigeria, Boko Haram is choir practice. Sadly. And when you look at the number of kids who have been kept out of school, and the fact that we are not investing in new schools, teachers, certification, new curriculum, access, and broadening all of these, the number of kids who could be out of school in another 20 years will be, the number of kids out of school now will be nothing compared to the number of kids who will be out of school in about 20 years. And those kids, the kinds of things that can radicalize them and the kinds of dangerous skills they can get access to in another 20 years will be nothing that we can fathom at the moment. And that's why I try to engage with rebuilding the network of the old students of the unity schools. There are 104 unity schools in Nigeria. And they are the federal government colleges that federal government set up, beginning with Queen's College and King's College in 1909 and 1927, going on to FGC Sokoto, Warri, and Obosi in 1966. And the idea was to forge a country in which young people could actually grow up with a common set of values. Now we're beginning to re-engage with that. One of the things we're trying to do is to address education policy and curriculum. Secondly, address accountability in education. Now you see, a lot of people go to school and pay school fees that get diverted by personnel of the school. Official appropriations to the school get diverted, and then you have all students putting in, investments that, in any case, have been paid for by public appropriations, or have been paid for by school fees and development levies. But the capability of the system to monitor and actually govern the investments it makes in education is no longer there. And we've got to reconstitute that capability. If we don't, we are not going to be able to make the best use of the investments we make in education. And when you add up the resources at state and federal levels invested in education, that's the highest area of social goods investment we make in the country. But all of those go to what? Parastatals. Education is over-parastatalized. There are so many parastatals, we are paying so much overheads, none is going to content, none is going to frontline services delivery, none is going to learning. Now, we're also trying to talk about partnerships. And that is to say, government cannot do education alone. We've got to partner with the private sector, with the voluntary sector, with philanthropies, and with all students. Because these are the people who have got proof, who provide us with proof that education is actually the quickest means of mobility. Mobility as a factor of production, mobility as a factor of nation building, mobility as a value system, from a system of poor values to a system of better values. The other thing we're trying to do is address education in Northeast Nigeria. Because Nigerians, I think, have got to realize insecurity in any part of Nigeria is insecurity in every part of Nigeria. And I'll end with this story. In Borno State, there are 3 federal government colleges. One of them is the girls' school called Federal Government Girls College, Mongono. Mongono is close to Lake Chad, close to Baga. And so after FGC Buniyadi in Yobe State was, after the incident in which the students were killed in February 2014, leading to the closure of Buniyadi, FGC Mongono was closed. At that point, FGC Mongono had over 2,000 female students. I went to now FGC Mongono remains closed, but the students were transferred to the premises of Federal Government College, Maiduguri. And I went to visit them last month. Out of the 2,000 students of FGGC Mongono, do you know how many are left? Less than 70. We've lost nearly 2,000 young girls in less than 2 years from education. Now think about the number of young girls who will not go to school again as a result of what's happened in the Northeast. Multiply them by the number of years we've got between now and another 14 years when Nigeria's population will grow by 67%. Think about the possibilities and the number of babies they are going to have. If that does not frighten you, that frightens me. And if it invites you to do something about the state of education, whether or not you are a member of the Unity Schools Old Students Association, join your old students and do something about education. It's an emergency.
Well, thank you very much, sir. It's quite a sobering thought, quite honestly. I'll hand over now to Mr. Davidson from the NOA.
Well, thank you so much. 2 of our participants here has raised a very fundamental point. The first one is talking about the high tariff being charged by the service provider. I think that the National Communication Commission is in a better position to carry out whatever sanction that needs to be done with regard to this, because it is actually not all service providers that have indulged in do this, but the NOA on its own does not have any role to play in this. I think that is why we are gathering here. My thinking is that at the end of this program too, whatever, if there's going to be anything from a communique, it should be also be communicated to the appropriate authority so that they will know how best to handle this, because Nigerians are actually being overtaxed. I am a Nigerian and I'm using a service which I know I am paying heavily for. Then on the issue of orientation of Nigerians with regards to abuse of internet usage, this is not in doubt. A lot of Nigeria indulge in doing this, and the role the National Orientation Agency is playing is to see that the Nigerians are adequately educated on implication of what they are doing. Recently, the Federal Ministry of Information, which is our parents' organization, launched the Value Orientation Program, which has to do with Change Begins With Me. What that campaign is saying is that we all must begin to do the right thing now. If I do the right thing and you do the right thing, if you agree that change begins with you and I agree that change begins with me, every problem or all problems that has confronted us with just surface out. What that campaign is about is just patriotism. That we should continue to be patriotic as citizens, doing the right thing, rejecting those negative values that will not take us anywhere, and embracing core values that has to do with patriotism, discipline, so that we can move forward as people, so that we can also develop. The social media is not like the conventional media, where you can just gather the pressmen and talk to them and educate them. But every Nigerian uses go to internet to do one thing or the other. So it is actually difficult to change people's attitude now, but it's a gradual process. But what I'm saying in a nutshell is that the National Orientation Agency has been talking to the public through our series of campaigns that we should begin to do the right thing and we should begin to reject those negative values which are not in our own interest. People go to internet and do all sorts of things that are embarrassing, not just to us as individuals, to the nation. And you know that changing people to a psyche is a very difficult thing. If you are talking of orientation, it's a difficult thing. Not difficult thing to do, but to achieve result immediately is somehow difficult. But I know with time we will get there.
Thank you, sir. Let's just push you a little bit. Doesn't NOA have a presence on social media? If you could use this. Does NOA have a presence on social media?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some of our chaps are even here also, and through that platform too, I know that.
Which of the platforms do you have a presence on?
Well, I don't have them in the head right now, but maybe they will let me have it. I will read them to you. We are on Twitter.
Okay.
We are on Facebook.
Okay.
We are on Instagram.
Okay. Look, why I'm pushing is I want to understand how exactly the NOA, because there are very valid issues raised around how people do use social media in terms of sharing information that works in terms of more dividing us than pulling us apart. So what roles, you mentioned the change begins with me.
is NOA_Nigeria, so as the Instagram, and the Facebook is National Orientation Agency Nigeria. So having realized the strength and the importance of the social media and the fact that the younger Nigerians are older smart devices and they are always online. So the NOA has up its activities online and has been engaging Nigerians through the social media platforms. And even at the moment,
a community. And when we talk about voice, I was most struck by
a mining community dealing with the
in spite of the information, and even
we invited a gentleman, so opening it to the floor.
we have a lot of programs. The agency conceived a lot of programs, and these programs are aided by the platforms, the social media platforms. And that is how because of the need to get in touch with Nigerians via social media.
A community.
So
and when we talk about voice, I was most struck by
Nigerians.
So we'll take a second batch of questions. Where's my ushers and my mic? Where do they disappear to? There are 3 hands on this side of the hall. So if we could take all 3 at the same time.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Akko Augustine. I want to speak from the angle of the civil society organization. I work with Environmental Trust Initiative. My question wants to go to our representative from National Orientation Agency. Sir, is there any means of communicating to the grassroots people aside our Twitter, Facebook, because most of them they don't have access to such provisions? And secondly, how do you welcome suggestions or ideas on projects that we can take down to the grassroots without throwing aside our proposal or advice to your organization? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Second person behind him. So this is the last round because of time. We're breaking for lunch. Last round of questions.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I have 2 questions, one to the NOA and one to Dr. Kalu. To the NOA, it doesn't sound like you do have a social media plan. So I want to just speak on values. You hear the NOA speaking a lot about values, going back to our traditional, original values. I wonder, when you talk about the value system you want us to get back to become better Nigerians, who actually developed these values? And I'm speaking specifically now maybe about this Bobrisky issue. I grew up in the north, and so I know that we had this, is it Dongo Yaro, these men, women, you see them a lot. Also, I know in the Igbo culture, we had a lot of Dandaudu, exactly. Also in Igbo culture, I know we have a lot, we also had that culture. So when our constitution, for instance, bans I'll use the word, bans homosexuality, but our value system actually does celebrate that. I wonder how you try and manage that disconnect, and
Okay.
So that's the question. And then
sorry, maybe if I understand. So we have a culture in the north and eastern parts of the country that recognizes the presence of men, women. I don't know what other words to use it. What do you
Dandaudu.
Exactly.
So culturally, people know they exist and they're there, but we have a constitution that claims that sees them as non-humans, if I want to put it that way. So his question is, as an agency that is responsible for our orientation, how do you balance what the Constitution says with what we know is in our culture? So that's that your question? Yeah.
Exactly. And then to Dr. Kalu, we have a constitution.
Odin Kalu.
Odin Kalu, sorry, sir. We have laws now that have criminalized homosexuality. I know as a human rights proponent, you advocate our human rights, and I know that you believe freedom of expression includes freedom to express yourself sexually. So would you be promoting those rights over country rights, for instance, or country laws?
Sorry, would I be promoting what rights?
Human rights, when they clash with the national laws and the national constitution.
Okay, so it's similar. So agency's role for him in his capacity as National Human Rights Commissioner. The lady there.
Good afternoon. My name is Abimbola Junaid. I'm a development practitioner and a media consultant. Mine is actually a comment, and it's to the director of the NOA, that I think that it's so important that you realize that the NOA is perhaps the most important agency in the country. You know, this old mantra about change really can begin with that institution, especially if you take it out of you're not looking at the NOA as a policy-driven agency, but a citizens' heartbeat-oriented hub. You know, like a hub, like we have values in the country that we want to promote, and this would even see the NOA working across sectors. You know, what are our values about the environment? The information should come from the NOA, just in case some other parts of the nation does not understand it. You will be the unifying body. And I think that's what's really missing in all of these agendas for change. It's not about the launch of the change begins with me. It would be that you are actually an educational hub. So if you actually need the support of others that are doing it in their own sphere, like all these people here organizing this program, it isn't an embarrassment, embracing them to work in collaboration with you to actually move the country forward. I think that is where we are right now in the country, that you should actually partner with others that are innovative and creative and make the NOA what it really should be. I think it's a great agency that has potential.
Okay, all right. So those were the last questions that we have.
Just one more. I'm sorry, it's going to be really short. And it goes to her question, which is for the NOA. If you guys are succeeding, how do we know you are? Because it feels to me that there's no real way of measuring what you guys are doing. So how do citizens know that the NOA is working or that it's not working?
If I rephrase it, what's NOA's benchmark for itself that we're working? What are your own internal M&E parameters that we're doing work and we're doing well? Do you understand? Okay, excellent. And so as you answer the questions, just use that as an opportunity to give your closing remarks as well, and we'll use that to close out. I'll start with Mr.
Well, the first question from my brother there, he was asking about how we communicate with the grassroots. The National Orientation Agency is nationally structured. We are at the national level, we are at the state level, we are at the local government level, even down to the worst level. We have what is called what is it called now? Comos. So, in communicating with them on government policy programs and activities or on any national issues, we do that through town crier. I'm talking of at grassroots level now. Town crier, town hall meeting, what we call Jehovah's Witness approach, and sometimes face-to-face contact with target audience, if it has to do a program that is targeted on a particular segment of the society. Then, in doing this, we interact with them to know their feelings and yearnings about government program policies and activities. We call this feedback mechanism. So we talk with them, and we take note of their observations, issues raised concerning government programs, this will also take back to government. Then the second question is talking about values, cultures vis-a-vis constitution. That some culture, if I understand him very well, some culture harbor certain things which the constitution does also not allow. But I think that constitution is supreme. Constitution supersedes any other thing in the country. But I also do know that just like sociologists will say, that culture is supreme. But it's actually a very difficult thing. The question you raise is a very difficult thing because there are some cultures that you cannot go to and begin to tell them you must do this and you must not do this. Because I know what I'm talking about, those of us from National Orientation Agency. So how do you go to far north, for instance, and there is a particular thing they indulge in doing, and you stand and begin to tell them, don't do this. So it is actually a very difficult thing. But what we have done over the years is to identify the core values in the Nigeria Constitution, which has to do with patriotism, discipline, religious tolerance, integrity, I think about 7 of them. So we use them as a guide in doing our campaigns so that Nigeria will know what is right and what is wrong. Then the other question, we actually we don't do our programs in isolation. Until of recent, I will now have economic recession, and things not just anyway. Generally, things are not moving the way it should move. In the past, we work with civil society organizations. Anyway, as we used to have the unit that coordinate the activities of civil society, we work with civil society because we believe so much in civil society organization. Because for any policy of government to succeed, if you don't carry civil society along, you cannot. I'm just saying this. You can hardly make a headway. Civil society are very much on ground, and sometimes what they do, and you cannot imagine what they do without even funding. So we actually do collaboration. We collaborate with organizations. We can also collaborate with the media, because these are very critical segment of the society that you cannot do without. If any of your mandate must be meaningfully and successfully executed. Then my last sister, I was talking about the yardstick. The yardstick we.
What success? National Orientation Agency.
This.
How do you define success?
Well, success to me is okay. If you are talking of success to the agency, or how we assess our success, so if that is the way the question is being put, I don't know. So we have a department called Planning, Research and Statistics. So they go out on field to assess our programs. We design questionnaires, we give to the people, and we get this back, and we use it to assess our performance, to know even if whether our programs are in line with what government wants us to do, whether the programs are even sellable, whether the programs are meeting the yearning and aspiration of the people. So we also carry out what is called a pulse of the nation. So we send our staff out to do research, to assess not just the programs of the agency, the programs of the federal government. So this helps us to be able to improve on our performance as an agency. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Let me try and address. Now, there was a point about, I think it was Augustine. I know I probably applied and they didn't hire me, but I don't work with the National Orientation Agency. I'd like to. But you make the point about grassroots. I came to this meeting this morning from Imo State, from my village in Imo State. and I'm hoping to go back today. Now, last night, I was in a meeting with my auntie, who is 68, and she didn't finish primary school. But she was telling me about things that were on Facebook and who posted them. She doesn't have access to Facebook. Now, when we talk about these grassroots, I think we detach them from reality. The reality of the permeabilities of the spaces in which we cohabit in our communities. And the fact is that the gap between, at least in many parts of the country, the gap between the actively engaged netizens and then the so-called grassroots may well not be as steep as we construct. And I think Yemi made that point in the immediate past panel, and that in the old media they called it pass-on rate. The fact that for every one newspaper sold, you had 5 to 6 free readers in some and over 10 free readers in others. So when you added the pass-on rate, the impact of the newspaper was very significant. I think it's the same thing with social media. That's why metrication as to the impact of the digital media is a bit difficult to work out. And that's also why I think that the NOA and agencies like that, particularly the NOA, which exists in absolutely every local government area in Nigeria and has to file reports. I mean, I recently had to look at NOA reports from the local governments. Don't ask me how. And what strikes me is that the same reports are rehashed pretty much every week, cut and paste, with very little change. I'm not talking change as in change begins with you. But seriously. And it seems to me that, I think the little thing we can do is begin to change the people in the various agencies we work in. Give them the skills to run accountable public agencies, the capabilities to be better, to be more competitive personnel. Just challenge them. You know what? If you leave this place, you can get a better job. Or you can get a job that can pay you more. Let's improve your skills. I don't want to create altruists and patriots of everybody. Just someone who can do better with themselves and make themselves better persons. Because if they become better persons, more able, more capable, they improve themselves, I count that as a win. Now, will everybody be able to be that ultimate Nigerian mega warrior who's going to be an avatar for everything fantastic? I don't think so. But if they can be an avatar for themselves and a liberator of themselves, I think it makes it easier as a leader, as a manager, to set them targets that they can achieve. And if they can do that, we can then deploy them in making sure that this gap between online, offline, netizen, and excluded is not as steep as we construct. But at the moment, most public agencies, this is not about anyone here or not here, most public agencies count themselves in terms of how many staff they employ. Poverty alleviation. Which is why, notwithstanding the embargo on hiring in the public sphere, agencies are still hiring new staff. Okay? If you've got someone whose legs are long enough or who can issue letters enough from offices high up enough, you will get a job in the public sphere, notwithstanding that we are running a recurrent deficit. That is, we are borrowing money to finance salaries. That means all of our capital expenditure is borrowed. Notwithstanding that, we are still hiring people in the public sphere. And something is fundamentally wrong about that kind of system. This is not the place to resolve it. I believe that is Ose. Is that correct? Osaneni? Right? Great. Because I think the questions... I came here this morning, quite honestly, with something else. I left my home with something else to discuss. And in my village, we are 2G. So I wasn't quite active online. So I started getting into 3G territory, and this stuff about Bobrisky, I swear I never heard of Bobrisky before this morning. Okay? But I get very annoyed. I'm really, really angry. And I'll be honest about that. The idea that people who believe in God can honestly decide that somebody is so off base, they cannot even share a platform with them, offends me as a human being. It is so bigoted, it is intolerable. And to have a company that believes in branding, a company that consults on branding, saying, beating its heart that it is this bigoted, makes me very mad. It makes me madder. That is why I'm not very articulate, because I really don't know what to say. Now, I did my first degree in 1987. And actually, the topic for my first degree was freedom from discrimination in Nigeria. At that time, we were not as advanced as we were. And what I argued, when I read that thing, I'm amazed, because I wrote it as a 15-year-old. Sorry, I wrote it as an 18-year-old. And when I read that, my central argument was very simple. The Constitution guarantees a right to discrimination, and we cannot foreclose the boundaries of the prohibition against discrimination. We've got to leave it open to interpretation. Now, I get here this morning and I'm told about culture and the culture of the North. You know what? I come from a place called Umuhu Okabia in Osu local government of Old Olu division in Imo State. You cannot find this on a map. Right? In that place, we killed twins. It was our culture. And leaving my village this morning, I'm reading a biography of Sir Odumegwu Ojukwu, Ikemba Nnewi's father, who was born in 1910. And why is this relevant? Because when his mother wanted to send him to school, his father refused for him to be sent to school because it was not the culture of the time for the son of Ezekwesili, who is Ikemba Ojukwu's grandfather, to be sent to school. And if you remember, part of our crisis as a country is because we have been ruled by a generation of soldiers who were commissioned before 1967. And that generation of soldiers was plucked from the class of people who were not leadership material. They were the working class of the communities from which they were drawn, because the leaders did not want to send their sons to the army. They sent the slaves. They sent people who were not prepared for leadership. It was not the culture to send the sons of the elite to the army. Today, it is the culture. Why am I saying this? Culture changes, positively and negatively. Now, Nigeria has also changed both positively and negatively in its culture. One culture that has changed negatively is the culture of bigotry. In 1966, after Ironsi was killed, Ironsi was a Christian. He was succeeded by who? Gowon, a Christian. In 1966, T.Y. Danjuma, who is a Christian from the North, could lead a coup because his brothers from the North had been killed. And they included Zak Malari from where? From Borno State. Abu Lagama from Borno State and Yobe State. Lieutenant Colonel Pam from Plateau State. Yes? And he saw himself as one northerner. Today, T.Y. Danjuma is a Christian from Jukuland. Now, that shrinking of his identity space from all of the North to Christian Juku of Taraba is the political geography of our descent into bigotry. And General Gowon, whose parents came from Plateau State but who grew up in Zaria, is seen as a Christian from where? Plateau State. As a matter of fact, they will give you his ethnicity. Now, so there was a time when, in 1974, the president was, or head of state was Gowon, the chief of staff was Commodore Wayne. Both of them were Christians. Today, you cannot run, and in 1993, we had Moshood Abiola, who ran for president, Muslim, and Baba Kingibe, Muslim, and Nigerians voted for them. Today, you cannot make that mistake. They will tell you, you cannot run Christian ticket or Muslim ticket. Correct? Yeah. We have become a more bigoted country. So, in terms of culture, we can't change culture. Culture does evolve. Okay? We had Dandaudu. We still have them. Now, this thing was not about who you are. It is about belief in the goodness of the human person and belief in the supremacy of divine mission. If God created you, this person like that, who am I to say God is no longer sovereign? Which is what you say. As long as you claim to be a believer, you cannot dictate to God how he creates people. And people will say, well, oh, you know, these gay people, they will come and every day you will see uncle who is raping small girl, 2-3-year-old. Those are heterosexuals who commit crime. We will go and plead for them. We will go and do what? And cover for them. And then you see somebody, you allege that they are gay. I mean, in Lagos these days, all the police do is they look at you, they say you are gay, they take you in, and they ask you to do what? To pay money, hundreds of thousands, to get you out of jail. What we've basically done is license bigotry as a mechanism of revenue in law enforcement. That's got nothing to do with this. Okay? And let's be serious about trying to build a country. As far as I'm concerned, if you are saying somebody is gay and because of that I cannot do business with them, that is not different from saying Chidi is Igbo and because of that I cannot do business with them. You've got to believe in the sanctity of human life to the point where you cannot choose for people what they need to be, as long as they're not doing damage to any other human being. What is the issue? Oh, well, people say, well, they're trying to marry one another. How many Nigerian gay men come to tell you that they want to be married? They want to celebrate their marriage in the marriage registry. That is not, and I fundamentally believe this is an argument we've got to have with ourselves, and we've got to be prepared to push it for as long as it takes until we understand that discrimination against anyone is discrimination against everyone. That if I don't like Yemi because her name sounds like Yemi, you will not, someday somebody will not like Chidi because his name sounds like Chidi. Now, a country where we decide these things based on such irrationalities does not have room for citizens. It has room for Neanderthals. And we've got to decide whether we want to be Neanderthals or pre-Neanderthals or whether we want to be citizens. If you want to be a citizen, I don't care what you do or where you come from. Respect our shared space. Make sure that shared space grows. And if we grow it, that's enough for me. And that is what I'd like to see an entity on national orientation do. Believe in the Federal Republic of Nigerians. In this republic, there is only one thing that matters, the citizen. And the citizen is created by what? The law. The citizen is created by the Constitution. And constitutions grow. Constitutions change. Constitutions evolve. When the American Constitution was adopted, the black person was not a human being. And in Dred Scott in 1867, they decided that the black person was what? 3/5 of a white person. And you see the migration, the mutation of the jurisprudence from Dred Scott through Plessy v. Ferguson in 1891, down to Brown v. Board of Education in 1954, through the Civil Rights Acts, to the election of a black person as the American president, or indeed to the possible election of a woman as the American president, which follows what? The 18th, 19th Amendments. Now, constitutions must evolve because societies evolve. And unless we see the possibility of evolution, we will continue to consign all of ourselves, not just women, to the other room. Thank you.
Fantastic. Couldn't have ended on a high note. Thank you very much for making the journey. I know what it took out of you to honor us this afternoon, and we're indeed very grateful. A slight housekeeping issue. We have 2 panel members that need to go into sort of high-level meetings in the afternoon. So we're going to move a panel up right now. So please do not go while Tolu comes. Again, thank you very much. I hope the session has been useful. And to the NOA, I know I can speak for my fellow organizers, if there's any way we can help as organizations, EIE, PIN, and budget, to help with your social media team, to help in communication, to help do focus groups, any way at all that we can help further this conversation, please, 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 call on us at no cost. So it's not a proposal, not anything. At no cost, we will, not a contract, thank you. We will gladly be of help.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Oh, thank you so much.
Another round of applause for this panel, and I think at this point we would have expected Mr. Chidi Odinkalu to actually drop the mic. It was that powerful. We will be having lunch in just a bit. Things are getting set up, but please don't forget to keep this conversation going and keep it active on social media. The hashtag is NMCG2016. We are still live streaming at youtube.com/pinnigeria.pinnigeria/live as well. To move on to the next panel, so that we can move on to other things. This panel will be discussing social media conduct 101, thou shalt not gaffe. And we've seen many people who should know better on social media actually gaffing. And it's about avoiding common blunders and mistakes on social media. To moderate this panel, from the Office of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is Tolu Ogunlesi. Please put your hands together for him. To be part of this panel from Tanzania, who actually is the Executive Director of Tawawazi East Africa, is Mr. Aiden Eyakazu. Please, a round of applause for him as well. Joining them on stage is one of the partners, founding members of Red Media, the founders of the Future Project Africa. Please, a round of applause for Chude Jidonwo. And last but not least, I have a lot I can say about this young lady. We've been together through many things, got our start together a very long time ago, almost over a decade ago. But she's a blogger, she's also a social media activist. She runs the platform Newswire NG, and she's a media fixer as well. Please also welcome to the stage Mercy Abang. So, Social Media Conduct 101, thou shalt not gaffe. Over to you, Tolu.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome my fellow panelists and of course the audience. Social Media 101, thou shalt not gaffe. I think the way I would like to start this actually is to ask my panelists, you know, how they would define, what they would consider sort of the worst gaffe that they've seen on social media, and then we can use that as the basis for, I think, for our conversation. I would actually like to also get the audience to sort of share, so that at least we're not talking theoretical stuff. You know, we've got an idea in our heads of, okay, you know, and is one person's gaffe another person's harmless conduct? So I think I'll start with Mercy and ask you to, like, what's the worst gaffe, social media gaffe that you've seen on not necessarily one, it can be more than one.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. I don't know why Tolu is starting with me, but I'll try. Whew. I was just conscripted into this panel, so I'm just trying to reboot and understand what we're talking about. Thou shalt not gaffe. I think, you know, in the course of tweeting, Facebooking, Instagramming, and all the platforms that we use, we fall into this category, consciously or unconsciously. But for those who, some people expect that their individuals, their agencies, their organizations that should not fall into that category. But then again, it hits you that it is a human being that is running the account.
it is somebody that is behind the account that is tweeting, or is someone that is behind the account that is posting. And it comes in different forms. But the only one I know I can really, really remember, I don't know if the account is still true or is false, is the account owned by, allegedly, so I'm on the safe side, allegedly said to be owned by the finance minister. When the story about a quote that, said recession is just a word, broke, and everyone on Twitter went very hard on her. No pun intended. And, it's so very funny, Tolu, because I recall that the bio of the account had to change to parody. I've never seen that in my entire life. So from an individual's account, you had to turn it to a parody, just so you can possibly, I don't know if they wanted to try and manage the crisis, but I think that was very funny. And everybody went really, and they had to change the account again from parody to the name. And I'm like, why don't you just, I think that was a major gaffe. That's a major gaffe I can really remember. But there are also organizations that we've seen over the years just go off it, and crisis management then comes in. How do you manage it when it happens? Because it will definitely, you're bound to gaffe when you're on social media. There's no perfection to these things.
I was going to just quickly give my own, an example. Actually, how many people remember, has Justin landed yet on Twitter? Again, I'm getting a sense that we're all biased. Well, we tend to be biased towards Twitter because it seems to be where, I don't know, Twitter seems to be made for gaffes. But how many people know, has Justin landed yet? If you've ever heard of Has Justin landed yet, let me see your hand up. So there was this lady called Justine Sacco who worked for, I think she worked in aid, like some humanitarian work. And just before she took off on a flight, I think from the US to South Africa.
Yeah, I remember that story.
And just before she took off, she tweeted, what was supposed to be a funny tweet about, she's going to South Africa, but she's going to be careful to not catch AIDS. Yeah. And the worst thing about that was that it was the last thing she tweeted just before she took off. Yeah. So she took off, tweeted it, switched her phone off, and the plane took off. 6 hours, actually, maybe more actually, more than 6 hours. It was about 12 hours, a 12-hour flight. And so somebody saw this tweet and just decided that, how can a white American be joking about HIV, it's Africa and AIDS and stuff. And so they decided this hashtag, and somehow they knew that she was in the air because, of course, she tweeted that she was flying too. And so they decided this hashtag, has Justin landed yet? Yeah. And so the hashtag had 12 hours to develop a life of its own. She had no idea whatsoever what was going on until she landed. And there was 12 hours worth of, the worst forms of Twitter attack. She lost her job, actually, eventually. She lost her job. Her company fired her and all that, and so it has become, in fact, there's a book titled, So You've Been Publicly Shamed, that actually assembles examples of people who, were shamed publicly on social media, mostly on social media, actually. And this Justin Sacco story is one of the key ones in the book. That's how much it has become an icon of social media shaming. And this was an extreme because she didn't even have a chance. I mean, maybe she would have apologized, 20 minutes down the line, but she didn't even have the opportunity for 12 hours, and now I think she's gone on to, she's almost kind of put that behind her. She's moved on, and all, but it still stands as a touchstone or a landmark of social media, a social media gaffe and social media shaming. So I'll ask Aidan to...
You stole my story. But that's okay, Tolu. I'll forgive you since I like you on Twitter. It's the first time I'm meeting this man. I live in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam, and I had an organization called Twaweza. Good job trying to pronounce it. It's not exactly very easy. It means, literally, yes, we can. And we use a lot of social media to try and get our work across to the population and to the government in the work that we do. And we work in two areas mostly: basic education and open government. So I'm very interested in this conversation that you're having, because it's about using technology to open up the inner workings of government to the citizens. So Tolu told my story about, and I'd forgotten the lady's name anyway, so thank you for informing me. I think one way, how do you avoid these social media gaps? I think first is to realize that social media makes that all of us are walking billboards. We're walking advertisements. Even if that's not necessarily immediately visible, we all have a personality now when we choose to do so on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whichever social media platform you choose to use. So that is the extension of your persona into the virtual world, and through the virtual world back into the real world. The people see you and understand you from what it is that you are displaying publicly on social media. So the first mistake to avoid is to assume that social media is a private space. It's not private. People can go and find you and see what you are all about. So if we keep that in mind, let's now talk about why are you on social media? So I'm going to ask this question, and I'm going to ask for a show of hands. How many of you are on social media merely to watch, observe, and learn, and not to say anything at all? Hands up. You've got a Facebook account, a Twitter account, Instagram, only to imbibe, to read, to watch, but not to say anything. How many? So you've never tweeted, never posted anything. I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 gentlemen. Benga's trying to put his hand up. I know he's lying. And that gentleman, so about 5, okay? How many of you, so 5 of you, very small amount. How many of you are on social media of any kind to express an opinion? Most of us are here to express our opinions. How many of you are on social media to influence either behavior and action, to influence action, to actually get people to do something, whether it is political, to go out and, my friend Benga did this with his friends at EIE, protest against the removal of subsidy. Remember that? Even I remember it. How many of you are there to influence action on social media? You want people to do something. Okay, I know most of you want them to buy whatever it is you're selling, right? Because that's the other action that people can engage in on social media. So, why I'm asking this question, what is your motivation for being on social media? So that's the second consideration for you to think about when you are engaging with social media. So if you're there to learn, or if you're there to influence or to cause action, there are a number of things which you also shouldn't do. So my third consideration is to ask you this question. How many of you like to shout on social media? You know what I mean? Write in capital letters with exclamation marks and lots of those things which will grab attention. How many? That's called shouting. A few of you like to shout. And how many of you tend to be sober, measured, considered? You know, you really agonize over those words before you write them down in your blog post or your Facebook post. How many of you really chew over what you're going to say? Hands up. You lie, oh. Really, honestly. Do you really think about what you're going to say on social media? Or do you just say it as you would to a friend in a bar? So these are the 3 things that I try to think about. Doesn't always happen when I'm engaging in the social media space. A, it's very public. B, what are you there for? And C, what is the tone that you're going to take in your engagement with the rest of the world. So this lady, Justin, I think had forgotten that it's very public, what she's doing, what she's saying. She's basically expressing an opinion to a friend, something you would say quietly at an airport. I'm going to Africa, and I hope I don't get AIDS. And the silly woman tweeted it, right? Expecting that it would be ignored. So she forgot that it's very, very public. Secondly, if I try to be influential on Twitter. I'm failing miserably, but you try to be influential. But here's one thing that I would argue you should try and avoid. Please try to avoid displaying your ignorance. Please do not advertise your ignorance. And sometimes we can do that in the most inadvertent of ways, Sometimes it's a bit innocent. You can retweet something somebody said, and then you give the 100% mark, so a thumbs up and all those emojis, when it is patently wrong. So if you're going to retweet, if you're going to comment on something in an affirmative, yes, this person is right, please make sure that at least you are convinced in your space that this is right. Don't retweet wrongful things, wrongful facts. Don't retweet somebody saying, the world is flat, and you say, yeah, this person is correct. History has shown, and science has shown that we live on a round planet. There are some other obvious facts like that I think we can double check, fact check. Because if you're a public figure and you do something like that, you will be fact checked. And your aim to try and be influential will disappear if you are proved to be wrong. Secondly, please don't insult people. And we do that so easily, right? How many of us have insulted someone on social media? Come on, be honest now. Especially when you're thinking you're having a private conversation. The rest of you are holy. We can sometimes insult people. And we were talking about bigotry here. Sometimes those insults are discriminatory or racist or misogynistic or, any one of those things. You say, typical. That's what they all say. People from that part of Nigeria or people from that part of the world. They're all like that, In my country, there's a very enterprising ethnic group called Wachaga. But they also, unfortunately, said to be, and this is not true though, said to be thieves. But they're not. But somebody will tweet or post, people, all those Wachaga from there, they're all thieves. That's insulting an entire group of people whom, innocently. Try not to insult. Third one. When we are engaging in Twitter or Facebook discussions, whatever it is, there is this philosophical fallacy called an ad hominem fallacy, right? You discredit an argument because you don't like the messenger of that argument. How many of us have done that? You discredit the validity of an argument because you don't like the person saying it. That's a fallacy. Argue the argument. Argue the case. Engage with the content of what's being said, not with And I've been on the receiving end of this. We do lots of polling. Some of it is politically controversial. And this time last year, we had predicted that a particular ruling party candidate was going to win the presidency of the United Republic of Tanzania. And the opposition parties were all up in my case, saying that I'd been bought, I had been bribed, I was a member of the inner circle of the campaign team, and all of these things. I even had a price of about $10,000. I wish it was more. I would have accepted. But the argument was not with the methodology of the survey or with the results of the survey or with the reasons why we thought that Tanzanians were going to vote for a particular candidate. It was, see, that person is so-and-so, such and such, they've been bought. That kind of ad hominem fallacy is going to diminish, reduce your value, your credibility on social media. And the fourth one, a very simple one, but I think one we forget all the time. Even when you're not on social media, we all write emails, right? Hands up. We all write emails. How many of you type an email and before you press send, read what you've written? I don't believe you. Have you spell checked your emails? Have you? Or grammar checked your emails? I think it's the same on social media, right? We need to, at least the appearance of careful writing. I know we have to use 140 word characters, so we can shorten a few things on Twitter. That's the only place. But Instagram, Facebook, can we please use our proper language, whether it's Igbo, Yoruba, English, French? It would be great if we actually wrote in complete sentences with good grammar and proper spelling. Let me stop there for now.
How many people have ever accidentally sent reply all when you meant to send just reply? If you've ever accidentally sent reply all, and not just a harmless reply all, but something that says something to one of the people. Actually, I want one or two people to just tell me what that felt like, what that mistake was, and what it felt like. Anybody who's willing to just tell us. Yeah, can we get the mic here? I want to just listen to. Okay, so we'll have somebody from there and then from here as well.
Good day. This is not a personal experience, but they say lots of YouTubers in Nigeria. Then someone sent a mail to all the emails saying they should register for something. I was part of the people who sent email to. Then AY comedian, the popular one, replied the whole mail saying, "You idiot, get out!" And people thought he was talking to everybody. He didn't know that he sent the mail to everybody. And the reaction after that, we started going after him, and someone was just trying to explain what he didn't know that he sent the mail to everybody because there were a lot of CCs and all. So,
yeah.
Good afternoon. Mine was actually private. I was trying to send it actually happened in not email but a WhatsApp chat. So I was sending something to somebody and then mistakenly I sent it to a group. And I had to quickly think of something that will go in line with the statement, and then I quickly corrected it. But people I think they didn't really code, but because I had to find a way to refine my statement because I was like, God. So I think it's crazy.
One more person. There's one more person here.
Hello, this actually happened to a colleague, our human capital officer. Someone wrote his resignation, and he wanted to send a kind of a termination letter or an acceptance of, but accused him of something. Now sent it to everybody in the office, and he now has to be begging us one by one that please just delete it, don't let it go out, And that was something that actually cost him a month of his job. He was suspended for a month. Because later he got about it.
One more.
Okay, I belong to a platform, a civil society platform, and we have someone on the platform that actually feels they know it all. So a friend of mine and I on the platform actually nicknamed the person Noms, and it was just between us. So the person then sent her a message on the platform. And, at that moment, my friend said, "There goes Noms." And I say, yeah. And so everyone's been asking us prior to that, what's this thing about Noms between the two of you? So the moment that person spoke and we had forgotten and said, "There goes Noms," everyone now knows who that person is. But I haven't seen that person since. I just couldn't face the person.
I asked for this because it gives us a sense of, and look, what we've talked about is all WhatsApp and email, which are still closed. I mean, they're not exactly social. They're not social media. It's not Twitter. It's not Facebook. Yeah, but it's bad enough when it's an office-wide email or a WhatsApp, alumni school alumni group and all that. Now, just imagine what it is when it's. I mean, with email, you can still kind of beg people, "Oh, please, just delete this email and all." But when it happens on social media, on Facebook, I mean, people have accidentally posted nudes. And that still happens. I remember when, there was a time you couldn't DM photos on Twitter. How many people remember when you could not DM photos? And I think that if you attempted to DM a photo, it will be posted as a tweet. So, we should actually take a moment to thank Twitter now that they've allowed photos by DM. But, so the point is that, look, these things happen, and, it's a lot of the time these gaffes are not intentional. But there's a question then that I want to follow up with, which is that, and I think the panelists, for you as well, that does context matter? Does context matter? So, if, how they say that, like, a black person can call another black person a nigger, but a white person cannot. Or someone can come and tweet, an Igbo person can come and tweet, my people are money, or my people like money too much. But if a Yoruba person tweets that, then it's offensive. So that's what I mean by does context matter? Do you think it matters that if you understood the context behind a certain tweet or a Facebook post, you should not get offended? For example, like the example of saying, a black person is calling another person nigger. So Kevin Hart tweeting and calling somebody a nigger, and Donald Trump doing the same thing. So do you think that context matters in with the things that we post on social media and the way that people should judge them? That something is a gaffe is no longer a gaffe because you know the context behind it.
I think for Nigeria, context does matter. I'll give you a personal example. There was a time I felt like I had series of posts then on Facebook. Twitter wasn't the buzz then. And I had series of posts about how the missionaries came to Nigeria and gave us healthcare facilities, gave us schools at a very low prices. But today, we don't have our kids can't afford schools owned by churches. And it was a very strongly opinionated post. And you know how we feel about religion in this country. I know some people even called my parents and asked if I was normal. Why should I attack the church? And the post was clear. Why should people put together resources and build a church and you have to charge them 1.5 million for their kids to school in such schools? And that was my own conversation. Now, I'm using myself as an example. If a Muslim and Abubakar Seidu had posted that, the reaction, of course, I think it would be more than what I received. Then I got a lot of people saying, some will say, yeah, you have a point. Others, gave reasons and whatnot. But in Nigeria, if a Muslim had posted that same post, the message is the same. The message is clear. And it was about churches providing educational facilities for our kids to go to school at an affordable rate like it was done before, and bringing the debates, let's have a conversation about it. But if a Muslim had done that, I'm sure it wouldn't have been the same way some received the message from me. So context does matter for countries like Nigeria.
I disagree. I think, back to the point I mentioned at the beginning, social media is a public conversation. So it doesn't matter, the context doesn't matter at all. You can make your case, you can explain why you are holding the position that you're holding, you can explain why you think people should take a particular course of action, you can do all of that. But remember, this is being read, in your case, by Christians, by your parents or your parents' friends, by Muslims, by Americans, by Tanzanians, by anybody in the world who chooses to come and look at what it is that you're posting on Facebook. So in that context actually doesn't matter. This is no longer a private conversation. This is on social media. Everybody is having a conversation with everybody and anybody at any time. So it doesn't matter context. You can, I think all the best that we can do is the best that we can do is try to explain why we think what we think or why we say what we're saying. We have no control, none whatsoever, over how the message is received by the reader and the viewer. None at all. So the best social media participants are the ones who are best able to connect with the largest group of people, whoever they choose to connect with, whether it's politics, whether it's young people, whether it's lovers of Manchester United. Those have got, those are the ones who get influence. But in terms of trying to control how your message is received, that one we have no control over. All we can say is what we say.
Let me welcome Chude, panelist. Before I come to Chude, I want to, how many people have ever deleted a social media post? Because you felt it was misunderstood, or it went, you sent it this way and it went this way. Let me see a few hands again. If you've ever deleted a social media post, again, I want a few examples, preferably personal examples. There seem to be, almost everybody has a hand up. So I want a few quick personal examples this time of what you posted and why you deleted it. So we'll start there. And let's just do it quickly so that we can have a chance to listen to. Yeah.
It was concerning this Farago cloth that Aisha Buhari wore. Immediately I posted it, somebody just told me, this thing is not verified, why are you posting it? And then a lot of people have already commented. I quickly deleted it because I have not verified it.
Okay, yeah. So we'll move this way, actually. We'll just go this way. Anybody here? I saw a lot of hands up. Okay, yeah.
They are now scared, Tolu. You see now, they've deleted their hands.
You've deleted your hands.
Okay. I deleted one of my posts because I used the wrong word. Instead of leave, L-I-V-E, I used L-E-A-V-E. I'm known as an English student, an expert. So I wouldn't be seen posting something like that. I know a lot of people will attack me on Twitter for that.
Yeah, okay. I had cause to do something like that too. I had a little, exchange of opinions with who was of a different religion. And I thought, outcome of our discussions, I thought it was something I could, share it. But I realized that I wasn't just addressing that issue to the person I know. There are other people who are also affected by that opinion that may not take it the way my relative took it. And I had to delete that. And that comes to the point that, yes, those things are in context. It's open, it's social media, but yes, it's in context because you cannot control people's interpretation of what you throw out there. So, yeah.
One more person? Yeah, there's a hand there.
Okay, so I discovered that Facebook will give you a memory of what you posted 5 years ago. So I was trying to raise funds for a project. And then I had finished typing it, I'd sent it, and one of my friends told me, Maya, you just gaffed to. And I was like, yeah, English student, graduate, school fees wasted. So I went back and I deleted it and I sat down. So since then, it helped people to just see you as a responsible person. And then people don't say, whenever you're writing, instead of to say, I am coming, you write I and apostrophe and put M, or I have, you now write I-A-V-E. So I stopped, it has helped. Thank you.
The last person.
Good afternoon once again. Mine is that I try to text and appreciate on the issue of security that our governor did in our state, that is Plateau State. Instead of writing to Simon Bakolalo, then I then text to Simon Dalon, who is the minister. So I quickly deleted it in order not to confuse.
I guess this we've kind of come down, to see that these gaps are not something high up there, and they can be sometimes things as simple as just English, for somebody who is seen as you say, you're an English student, and it can be something where it's an opinion that you just did not think through, But how many people have actually gone back to delete a post from years ago? How many people have gone back to delete a post from years ago? Yeah. I want to know why, because now that's another level. It's not just something you've just posted, but you've gone back to the past.
My name is Abayomi. It's just something I do on a regular. I can delete my tweets, everything at once. So it's something I can do. So it's something I just cleanse everything. It's something I do on a regular.
Why?
I just like to purge. I just like to purge, so it's something I do.
Anybody else?
I'll give one example. So I worked in First Bank for 4 years, and I didn't get a query. But I did the consultancy job for somebody after 3 months, and I got a query. And I'll tell you this example. So someday, there's this Twitter handle called Questionnaire. How many of you remember that Twitter handle? He asks you questions. So yeah, I was just asking me, have you stayed in a 5-star hotel before? I said, yes. So which 5-star hotel? I didn't even say. I said, Transcorp Hilton. So who paid for it? I said, I think it was Knight Foundation. I didn't know the Knight Foundation people were checking their stream of Twitter. Next one was an email from the organization. That, Sean, what did you just do? That people say, our own foundation money, we're putting you in a 5-star hotel. In my head, I didn't connect what they mean. Like, I say 5-star. Say, but you are showing people outside that we're wasting public funds. So that day really dawned on me a lot about what you say on social media. It's not just social media. It's public media, and it's something that we should take note of. Thank you.
So I'll come to Chude. Now, I mean, you do a lot of, well, your company does digital media consulting. And so corporate politics and all that. So I want to, from that point of view of, I guess, having to advise people, I think 2 questions. What would you sort of consider, what's the worst gaffe that you probably have had to deal with? Either committed by a client or even possibly your company, well, not to demarket yourself or anyway.
Right.
But what's the worst that you've seen, and then following up on that, just give us sort of your thinking about this whole idea of like it's a social media gaffe. Yeah,
Right.
What do you think?
Well, first, since I'm late, I have a lot of things to say. First, it's a miracle to see you drinking normal water. I thought that you were drinking villa water.
We'll come back to that.
We'll come back to that. And also, the second thing I wanted to say is this: why we say you should use Facebook, not Twitter. Since you said I work for some clients, in Facebook everybody is forgiven. You don't need to delete anything. It's a family. Go on Facebook.
That's a good point that will actually also come back to Twitter versus Facebook or whatever. Yeah.
But I mean, I think that the one time, I'm trying to remember an example. I think that many years ago, the functions in Y Nigeria were split. Somebody was in charge of social media and somebody was in charge of. Actually, no, there's a more recent example. When, of blessed memory, Mayowa, the lady that was, when she passed on, Y Nigeria has a policy when deaths shouldn't be published until after 3 confirmations down the editorial line. But then we just recently split the social media function from the editorial function. And so, somebody was actually writing a post on the media blog, Y Nigeria has a media blog, saying media houses waited for about 2 hours before reporting Mayowa's death, and that was a good thing. But then the social media guy trying to break the news quick, so this post was on the back end, still calculating. And social media guy goes and posts that, RIP Mayowa. And so we thought, well, first and foremost, it's against the policy. Second, we're trying to make a point about responsibility in media. And so there was a cross purpose. So we thought, let's delete this. So we had to delete that tweet and say we were still trying to confirm and all of that. So that's an example. Also shows sometimes how, because of the immediacy of social media, people struggle to create rules that govern news and all of that and opinion, because they both have different imperatives. Web has a different imperative, social media has a different imperative, and sometimes those two can struggle in the newsroom, especially if you're dealing with a youth audience. So that's that. The second question was?
So the whole idea of, so when we started, I talked about Justin Sacco. Has Justin landed yet? The
Right.
lady who,
Right, yes.
you know, and
Yes.
as kind of
Yes.
starting point. Yeah.
Yes.
So I just wanted to get your own thoughts about.
I think that the Twitter mob is a real problem. And I'm very disdainful of the Twitter mob. Many years ago, somebody was accused of rape on Twitter. And I saw an intelligent young man who confidently said, even if he's innocent, we are right to tweet about his guilt. I don't want to mention the person's name, because the evidence is so strong. And I thought, this is such a deeply dangerous sentiment to express. And the rush to judgment on Twitter and on social media generally is a deeply disturbing trend. Just the Justin lady, for instance, she was apparently being sarcastic. This was a highly evolved woman in a high-paying job who understood, and she couldn't believe that any sane human being would think that she was actually making such an obviously racist statement, you know. And she had family, I think, in South Africa. I think her mom is South African or something. So obviously she was also African, I think, because you know the guy who wrote the guy who got the article, Sam Bidzul of Gawker, eventually met with her, essentially apologized, eventually had his own incident that made him almost commit suicide. And so he eventually came to understand what he had done. So I think that gaffes on, is it gaffes or gaffes? Gaffes. Thank you so much. I think gaffes on social media are highly overblown and highly overrated. I think that it is the human nature to make mistakes. And I think that criminalizing mistakes eventually stops people from being human. So for instance, we say the era of business to business or business to human has changed. Communication online now is human to human. And yet, we penalize corporations when they try to respond as humans. So when a corporation tries to engage, we say, why are you not being professional? When the organization says, okay, I'll get back to you, you say, why are you not being personal? So we create an atmosphere that makes it difficult for people to be people. I think I apply a rule of if somebody makes what I think is a mistake on social media, I give 1 hour before I respond such a mistake. Because first, 5 minutes is inadequate to complete the cycle of analysis. So somebody did something wrong. Is it acceptable? Is it condemnable? Etc. I think that it takes a while. Again, it's the nature of the beast. So if you're a communication person or you're a PR person, then you don't spend your time thinking about existential questions like what people mean. You deal with the world as it is. But humans to human, I think that we need to together come up with a new sensibility where we understand the propensity of social media to lead to errors in thinking, and we collectively agree to forgive ourselves. You know, I mean, this is of course one of those highfalutin, like the idea of, it's one of those highfalutin thoughts that we never practice, because how do you get everybody together to agree to forgive ourselves? But if we can get to a place in the culture where we say, look, human beings will make mistakes. People are not necessarily bad people, and sometimes they have the best intentions. Then we can create a safe space or safe spaces for people to have important conversations on social media. That's my thought about it.
Thank you.
I want to just maybe respond to that with this thought. I think you're right that we may rush to condemnation very fast on social media. But then again, we shouldn't be naive about the fact that we are all now equipped with a megaphone, all of us with a megaphone, to broadcast what we think to the rest of the world. So if we're all shouting, and then one of us chooses to shout something particularly offensive, and everybody else stops and listens for precisely 3 seconds and starts shouting it back at you without processing it, that's to be expected. I think there's a commentator, is it Evgeny Morozov? You guys are the ones who know more about these social media academics. But what the one thing I took away from reading someone was reading is that social media amplifies the best and sometimes the worst parts of human nature. It amplifies it. It doesn't shape it. It doesn't diminish it. It doesn't, forgive it. It just amplifies it out there for the rest of the world to now respond to it. So if we're conscious of this fact, that whatever we do in the public space, in the public commons of communications, is going to be amplified and go in directions which are unexpected, then maybe we ourselves will take it upon a personal responsibility to moderate what it is that we put out there, knowing that it's going to really be broadcast to 7 billion people on the planet.
But sometimes the problem is sometimes in amplifying, it distorts. So amplification is like magnification. Magnification takes a small speck and makes it a huge mole, so that's just the challenge. And also, Twitter wasn't made for people to pause and think. Like literally the original question, what are you thinking about now? It's not asking you what are you processing in your mind now. It's like the new updates I got from Gmail the other day. Oh, do you want to receive alerts on your email on your desktop? I'm like, no, I want my email to remain in my email so it doesn't control my life. But all of the agenda of social media is not to allow you pause and think. It's allow you think. It's allow you just do without thinking and without pause. So the call, and I think it's a lost battle really, because this is going to be the new normal eventually. But I think we just have to reach a place of mutual understanding where we're able to, because it distorts. So sometimes somebody says something, the person didn't mean it that way. The person was trying to force it into 140 characters. That's the reason why I don't tweet. So I sign out of Twitter on Mondays and I sign back in on Saturdays. If somebody upsets me, the process of logging in to respond to that person, by the time I've logged in, I might decide better about responding to that person. But if you are 24 hours on the platform, it doesn't enable or encourage thought. And that is the problem, in a 24-hour media cycle.
So I guess, that point, I like that point about, social media. Twitter was not, it was made as a fleeting, almost ephemeral medium. But now we are coming to it with the judgment that we will come, another question. What before social media, what was the worst gaffe that you could, as a normal human being, commit? I want us to think about how difficult it would have been. Even if you I want to commit a gaffe, what could you have possibly done? Short of taking a gun into NTA, or FRCN and taking over the station to broadcast something, or you know what I mean? Just think about how difficult. I think about it, and I always use this example. Okay, we all know where we were when Abacha died, or when the news came that Abacha died. Yeah, we all knew where we were. Yeah, and of course, none of us at that point, when we heard the news, none of us picked up a phone and typed something, because it just was not possible. You know what I mean? So it was, we're coming from an age where it was almost impossible for ordinary human beings like us to gaffe. You could be a newscaster and you gaffe on TV, but almost impossible. Now, from that age, we have come to a place where each of us is a walking gaffe. It's a gaffe machine, essentially. Because with your phone now, you can tweet something now that is going to get the entire world on your case. They don't know your name, they don't know your face, they don't know anything, but they will spend the next. So I think that we will not even be having this conversation at all, obviously, without social media. If social media did not exist, I don't think we will be coming to talk about what it means to gaffe on such a public scale and in front of the world. And that's what that book that I talked about, So You've Been Publicly Shamed. It's a book that actually has the Justin Sacco and a bunch of it. Just assembled stories of people who have been publicly shamed, and how they've come to deal with it. And actually mentions the Sacco incident where the guy who shamed her eventually apologized. Because when he got his own shaming, there's nothing that gives you perspective like when you have what you've dished out to other people gets dished out to you. So I guess it's actually what thinking about along those lines, and what Chude said earlier that I said we should note. He says he doesn't tweet. I've also come to see just how Twitter can be a much more, I don't know what the word is, misleading or context-free platform than Facebook, for example. And so think about when you tweet 10 tweets. Now, the chances that people will see, the chance that anybody will see all 10 tweets is tiny, is very little. People are going to more likely see one or two of those tweets. Even when the tweet obviously continues into a second sentence, I think we're just not wired to see things that way. Facebook, on the other hand, all those 10 tweets will be one post. And then you can come back and, so what Trude said about, that's why all of us should go to Facebook. Facebook seems to be, it feels like more of that village square. Yeah. I may be mistaken, but I want to go back to that and want the panelists to...
first and foremost, I have a hidden agenda in plugging Facebook. So that's that. But I think it's actually the truth. Again, Twitter isn't enabled. Look, Twitter as a platform succeeds the less your thoughts are refined. That's how it was built. Now, there's nothing. The first thought that comes to your head is not the thought you want to share with the world. Usually, as a writer, you want to write an article. I've been writing an article. Okay, I've been writing an article about this administration for 3 months. But each time I write it, I think context, relationships, etc. And then I'm getting closer to the draft that I need to do. Now, what happens with Twitter is it's literally your first and second and third and fourth and fifth drafts that you are sharing with the world. And obviously, it's not going to be well made. It's not going to be ready made. But if all of us produce our well thought, well made articles, then Twitter would fail as a platform. So you have to balance your priorities against the priorities of a Silicon Valley company, really. Now, Facebook, however, is different. Facebook is, I think, it's not primarily solely about the expression of random thoughts. It's about the building of communities. And therefore, these people know you, they understand you, they have your history. That's the reason why you put up a post in Facebook. You put up a post in Twitter and get 2 retweets. Put up a post in Facebook, you get 94 comments. I saw my friend Chooks one day of Guardian, right? Oh, I'm in the front of the cockpit. I'm going to be a pilot. And grown men, 54 years old, people that were editors when I was in school. Chooks, my guy. It's like, what's wrong? So Facebook turns people, I think that Facebook turns people into their babyest format where they feel comfortable, and because it doesn't punish for length, it doesn't punish, so it allows you fully express your thoughts. It allows you fully think through it.
And you can edit your posts.
You can edit your posts. And you have more context. This is what you post. Can look at your about, can look at your photos, can look at your political views, can look at and say, okay, I get where he's coming from. I get where she's coming from. It's also, Facebook, for instance, is the only platform that recognizes, I think, 16 gender identities as well. So really, we can even see literally, you can see where you are literally coming from. So these are 2 platforms enabled for 2 different things. I think that the truth is that people need to understand. It's like you wouldn't, if you went to get to California in 18 hours, you're not going to enter a ship. You're going to enter a plane. And so it's the same thing. If you want to hear deeply textured discussions about Obama's government, you don't go to Fox News. So it's the same way that you should think about these platforms as different media and think, where do I want to go for my unvarnished thoughts? Where do I want to go for my fully formed thoughts? Where do I want to build a community? Where do I want to go if a picture tells a better story? I think that, again, as we evolve as a connected generation, we will begin to see these platforms for what they truly are. Some of them are home. Some of them are the bar. Some of them are having nothing to
locker room.
Some of them are the locker room. Some of them are all kinds of places, and we begin to think a bit more about. Unfortunately, some people are going to have to be the scapegoats. In any time before you move into a new normal, there'll be people who are caught in the middle, and then suddenly they realize, oh, we shouldn't use that for this. So many of us who don't tweet a lot, we're only doing like Okpeo. Somebody tweets something, and I'm like, I was going to tweet that thing last week. Jesus is faithful. And you learn and you move. Unfortunately, the more vocal people, just like the person that always asks questions in front of the class, are going to be sacrificed so that the rest of us can learn and move forward.
That's it.
I think if we're talking about this topic and we don't talk about the shorthand writing that is all over the place in Nigeria now, we're not doing justice to this session. When someone is telling you how and is saying he's writing OW, and it's now a trend, and it's a trend for even graduates in Nigeria. People are sending you messages, serious messages, and they're writing, oh God, I just want to plug, as in, I don't know, it gets to me so much that I don't know how to react to it. So again, you know, before we move on to Facebook and Twitter, we need to address that. Is that the kinds of conversations we want to be having? Is that the kinds of spellings we want our young people to be? Is that how we want them to be writing? Why are you spelling how? It's each time I talk about it, it gets to me. I had to force myself to tell everyone around me that sends messages, like, I don't even respond. I'm like, what are you saying? and my little brother at some point was always sending messages and was writing. I'm like, why do you send messages like that? Why do you write like that? And he said, that's a trend. Everybody's doing it. I said, no, it's not a trend. It is wrong. Because when you're writing examinations tomorrow, you wouldn't know what is the correct spelling. So I think we have to start a conversation around that and tell our young people that is not the right way to write. You don't write wrongly and call it a trend. That in itself is very wrong. So I think that's a major thou shalt not gaffe that we should take home as well. Moving forward, Facebook is forgiving, like Chude rightly pointed out. Facebook is very forgiving. And these terms I just pointed out, that's where you see them. They're all over Facebook. Their own Facebook. And you see it all over the place. And, you know, Facebook is like a newspaper where you see the words, they're written down there, and you can go back to it. Twitter is broadcast, so it drops. And again, with due respect to natives of Facebook, the Twitter community, I think they're a little more demanding, and they're the ones that in the urban areas, very much in the urban areas, and they're following news. If you're all about news and current affairs, you're more on Twitter. So the Facebook community is, who gave birth last month? What's happening? Oh, I'm bare. My friend just had a baby. Look at the child's face, looking like the father more than the mother. You know, that's the kind of conversation that really goes on, and sort of looking at those people that you grew up together, and my friend called it a gossiping platform. I don't know, but, you know. So that's how you understand the reaction that you get. It's a community where everybody, you know, wants to say hello, how are you doing? And Twitter is uptight, you know. And because of that, I think some people are even scared of joining that community because they feel they'll be bullied out. But when you post a tweet and you've been background once, you will not you will not spell wrongly again on Twitter. So Twitter will teach you. Sorry, I had to use background because I hope some of us understand. Sort of, if you write in bad English, they just write background at the tweet. I think that, I don't know what that means. I don't know who invented it. I don't know if it's correct, but I had to use it. You know, so it's you get to learn and you improve. And I'm sure that most of us have learned. Live whatever alone at some point became the norm. Leave, but some people had to call it out. Some of these spellings, you know. So for the Twitter community, it's an educative community that teaches you how to write, and they don't spare you, which is also a good thing. So if you want to really get you want to properly communicate, Twitter is not a bad idea. Twitter, because Facebook, nobody tells you, this English is badly written. I really don't see that there. I don't know why they do that, but you know, it's a forgiving community. Maybe that's what happens there. But we need to really tell our young people to stop writing in shorthand. That is not even shorthand. It's bad English.
Well, so we have to close. But is that perhaps why? You know, we've talked a lot. We've focused a lot. I know maybe not fairly on Facebook, Twitter. But is that perhaps why platforms like Snapchat, you know, are so popular now? Where, I mean, you know, you tweet and after 24 hours, you know, it's gone. Instagram stories as well, it vanishes. You can't save it. I mean, you know, Snapchat I made people know that if you attempt to munch or screenshot on Snapchat, the person gets a notification that you have, a friend of mine didn't know, and so, he got one or two people to block him when he attempted to munch their snap. So is that perhaps why, do you think that would, these difficulties we've talked about, seeing this Twitter mob that Chude talked about, seeing it, I've not heard of Snapchat mobs. I've not even heard of mobs on Facebook, in that sense. So do you think that this is just going to push people towards that kind of, how can I post something and then it will be deleted? I want something that will be deletable, that can vanish, that people cannot save. Do you think that, is that the future? And is that maybe why Snapchat is so much more popular than, say, Twitter or anything else now?
I think you're right. Andy Warhol, the artist, said one day, I think he was quite prescient, he could see the future. He said, one day everybody is going to have a chance to have their 15 minutes of fame. Now, social media allows us way more than 15 minutes. Some of us really wish it was just 5 seconds, right? When we do our gaffes on social media. So Snapchat, I think, is a response to and who's using Snapchat? Probably people under the age of 18, mostly. I've got 2 nieces who live in the US, and that's their world. Snapchat and WhatsApp, because they can control who they are on WhatsApp. But that's where they live. Twitter for them, Facebook, forget about it. Facebook is so ancient, it's about as old as their grandparents, right? Snapchat is the place to be, because I think the vain nature in our egos, all of us as human beings, still want to live a very public, private life. We want to live a very public, private life. So we still want to do the social media so that people can see us. We're famous for however many seconds, but we want control over how long we can have our gaffes exposed to the rest of the world. So Snapchat works very well. I just want to comment a little bit on what was said a little bit earlier there. I tend to be a little bit more relaxed about the language on that's being used on Twitter and on Facebook, the shorthand, whatever it is. I mean, if you think about it, those of us who claim to be practicing good English, we use words such as, can you go Google something? Is Google really a verb? Google is not a verb. That's not proper English. I bet you the Queen doesn't use Google if we're saying, You see, you disagree. Very good. I like when we have disagreement here. So, but there is a whole evolution. How many of us enjoy some really good rap music? Or even the fantastic rhythms of modern Nigerian music? And the text and the words and the lyrics. Is that good English? Is that good Yoruba? Is that good Igbo? No! It is the language, it is an urban language. It is the language of the net. It is an additional way for us to express ourselves. And I think we shouldn't fault too much. I'm a bit more relaxed than you, Mercy. We shouldn't fault too much the young people or the netizens wish to express themselves in these particular ways. The way you express yourself is a whole dimension to your persona as well. It's like the way you dress on a picture, the way you express yourself in text is part of that persona. So let's be, I think, a bit relaxed about that one. And finally, so I think you're really being a bit unfair with Twitter. I actually think, as you said, Twitter makes you really think. You have 140 characters to convey a deep thought. You will really think about it. Wasn't it you, or was one? There's another person on Twitter whom I used to love every morning, the headlines, that they would turn the headlines into a fantastic 140-word character story. Was it you? Teju Cole, yes. He stopped doing it now. Could you please talk to him and see if he can? Now that took deep thinking, and he blogged about it. He said, this is my thought process. And I thought, to be able to be so conscious about how you use the language and expression and evoking what it is you want to say in a 140-word character, I think that's an absolutely marvelous instrument. I actually think our high school, in fact our primary school kids, should be taught how to tweet in proper English. Then we shall save our languages. Thank you.
you know, the mention of Tejuko just made me think of what we said earlier about context. So Tejuko used to do that stuff where he would take news headlines from the past and just, you know, turn it into just this fantastic, you know, just very illuminating message. And, you know, there was a day, and often the people, the subjects of those tweets were often working class, poor people. You know, so some Baba in Isolo or something who did something got into trouble when he tweeted using the Dana 2012 when the Dana plane crash happened. And Twitter, class Nigerian,
but that Kiss Dana Arego, it's gone. We've lost that battle. But my rule is, I've gone around the world. I've never seen a person who died from an apology. Apologize.
We've been hearing a lot of that. But of course, a very big thank you to them. And you guys are really the true MVPs. You've settled in. It's been a great session. I don't think I heard any phone ring. And I was looking for somebody who's going to start doing some singing and dancing for us. But nobody's phone rang, and everybody's had a great time. And the tweets have really been coming in as well. So later on in the afternoon, we have case studies that we'll be looking at and 2 breakout sessions. We really don't hope to take too much time with those. But right now, we are going for lunch. I hope you have gotten your ticket. If you have not been given a ticket, please see one of the ushers, and they will hand you a meal ticket, which will be collected when you get inside at the next place. We will do this in... Yemi, 45 minutes? How many minutes lunch? We will do lunch in 45 minutes. Please, everybody come back inside. It is 2:20 now, so we're looking to kick off the next session 3:05 thereabouts. So thank you again, and see you in a few minutes.